far, you'll have to guess. I have never seen such vigor which before budget is being read or before any finance bill is brought to the floor, such a kind of participation and engagement, and you know everybody, even people we never expected to be part and parcel of kuelewa what bill is. They're all there, so it was really an eye-opener for me. So we'll have that particular session open discussion. Henceforth, there'll be a closing remark, and then we'll have, of course, we'll have a session of Q&A before that, and then we'll close it at day. So, Mr. Ochieng, I hope I got the salutation right. Sije kumbe professor, and then nilikuwa nimeoffend some people. Karibu.
Salamu alaikum. Melania, utaniwia radhi, hiyo pesu umeset na Kiswahili ya pwani sitaweza. Okay. Thank you so much. Let me go back to Inglu, what I understand and know best. So, good morning, everyone. My name is John Ochieng. I represent CFA. CFA is the Center for Fiscal Affairs. So, members of the Okoa Uchumi, members of the Fourth Estate, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great privilege and honor to be with you here today and to join hands with you and all other Kenyans to add our voice to this controversial debate of Draft Finance Bill 2023. At CFA, we aspire to see a strong, fiscal, and just society. And we do that by promoting and advocating for increased accountability, transparency, and responsiveness in our government. We want the tax and spending policies by government to be responsive to citizens, and we want citizens to participate in that process. So if we find any opportunities and spaces where we can voice our concerns and educate the public on their rights to participate in governance and be at the tables where decisions are being made that influence the economic prowess, then we'll insert ourselves in those spaces. As you will realize in the survey findings that will be released to you this morning, the survey findings that CFA jointly conducted with Twaweza, you'll realize that the draft finance bill, if enacted as is, will continue burdening the already incapacitated Kenyans economically. Okay? So we will continue socializing the findings with those who participated in the survey and those who did not participate. And we'll also make sure that we do all it is within our means to ensure that even the policymakers, the decision makers who are responsible of debating and passing the bill hear the plight of Kenyans. The government needs to pause and reflect on the several submissions and petitions that are within their purview before making a decision on this bill. So we really want to welcome you. The survey findings will be presented to you. Please have an open mind, critique it, add your voice onto it, and let us continue with that vigor and commitment and focus to ensure that we add our voice to this. And even if, God forbid, the bill passes as it is, then we'll be on record as having done our part. So thank you so much. I don't want to waste a lot of time. I'll want to give more time for the presentations and probably feedback thereafter. Thank you, and I wish you a fruitful discussion. Melanie.
Thank you. Thank you, John. That was a very good background there. Hello. It's working now. Asante, John. I think that background was spot on. I mean, you're very clear to the regards that if this bill were to pass as it is, then for certain the effect will be felt, not now, but I think probably, 10 or 20 years or from now. So we have to make as much noise as possible. We have to push for this. We have to really advocate for an alternative. A few days ago, one of my colleagues, he's based in the Netherlands, he challenged me, he told me, fine Melania, as much as you don't want to pay taxes, there's no way you can claim you absolutely do not want to pay taxes. What is those opportunity loss and costs that you are offering the government? Because if you go to the government, we have to have an alternative. I know there are various ones which have been proposed, but he said there have to be a trade-off. And what is that trade-off? Where rightful for the government is saying that we need money and we have to get it from you. So I think also when we live here, probably we should have that element of what practical option can we offer, which is, at least, which is reasonable and makes sense. Asante. So for the next session, I'll welcome none other but James Sierra. James Sierra is not only a statistician, but he's also country lead of Twaweza, and he'll share with us the various insights which we got from interviewing, actually to self-administer online questionnaire amongst like 25,000 Kenyan in a span of 2 weeks. So karibu, James.
Good morning. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. It's a privilege to stand before you and to engage you in a few things that probably have also taken part in terms of contributing towards this discussion. And also to thank our Okoa Uchumi Coalition for the opportunity they gave us. Last month, we had a workshop just to learn and understand the bill. And that's why I discovered a few things, and out of that discussion or engagement, CFA and Twaweza sat down and decided, as we present our submission to the government, I think without data it might be a little bit, it won't be weighty as it's supposed to be, because we represent the Wananchi, and there's need for the government to get to understand the concern of what the Wananchi are going through. So out of that, we came up together and then, we decided to sit down, draft a questionnaire, and we administered it. And thank you for those who participated. So it has been a long conversation, which started in 2020 to 2021. We are working together with national taxpayers, whereby we wanted to understand the awareness on issues around taxation among Kenyans, just to understand how willing are they to give tax in terms of compliance, in terms of knowledge. Do they understand what's the role of KRA and such kind of things? And this gave us the opportunity to understand that 85% of citizens understands that paying tax is important in order to promote development in a country, because there's no way a government can be able to function without getting revenues. So 85% are in support that they have to pay, believe that paying tax ensures that services are delivered. And although we have this big percentage, almost 40%, that's around 39%, normally do it because it's a must. So if they were asked, would you be willing to pay tax or not? 39% would be willing to pay tax. Now, while tax is seen as important by the majority of citizens, 48% believe tax evasion by individuals and business and even organizations in the country is high. So what does it mean? As we have seen, almost 39% think pay tax because it's compulsory. They believe, or Kenyans believe, almost half believe that tax evasion is quite high. And why is it high? Some of the reasons, it's because, one, tax rates, they are high tax rates, which they think the government should do something at least to lower that, such that they can give incentives to Wananchi. 40% say that they don't have enough money to pay tax, so they think the income they get is so little, and tax is not spent efficiently. So that's also another thing that the government need to address, because Wananchi believe whatever they give to the government is not used efficiently. Now, besides that, awareness and willingness to pay tax, we also wanted to understand the cost of living, because this is something that we need to understand, how things are, how is the economical situation, especially after we got out of COVID, where we had a lot of support from the government, subsidies, unga, everything, and eventually after that period, there was scrapped and life was back to normal. So we conducted another survey in November 2012, and we found that 75% of households said that their daily income was insufficient. Now, if 75% of Wananchi said that whatever they got was insufficient, now, in addition to that, you add tax. Not just add, but add a few components that contributes towards their income. Then I think the outcome will be quite loud. At household level, inflation and cost of living were named as top concern by 60% of Wananchi. Now, this was in November last year, when the cost of unga and other essential commodities had not yet shot up. What about now? If it was at 60%, I believe now it's in the neighborhood of 80%. We also found that half of the business, it's around 49 to 50%, among the business that were polled, said that the products that they are producing had low demands, which means it had some implication on the profit they were making. So if the sales were quite low, what do you mean? One, there are implications in terms of laying off workers. In terms of expansion, it's no longer there because they have to be there, or they have to employ survival tactics for them to continue being in business. Another concern they raised, around 14% of the businesses said there was high cost of inputs, and there was lack of sufficient working capital, whereby they need other sources of capital, and the profit margin was going down. So when you combine all this, and these are the key partners the government is targeting, not in a way to reduce the tax, but in a way to increase the tax. So eventually, these are the people, or these are the potential people to help the government run the economy, but they are the ones who are suffering, and they continue to suffer. So, looking at the way things are, and sometimes, although we blame the government, but sometimes they don't have an alternative, because the government is currently facing a lot of challenges, and some of these challenges as a result of a few things. One of them is the growing debt, which currently stands at 9.1 trillion. In that, like the 67% of the GDP is into the government revenue. So what does that one tell us? As in, based on the estimates, the 2023-24 estimate, out of the 100 shillings the government collects, 63% of 63 shillings goes to debt repayment. So I think it's also quite practical when you're paying a loan. So the first thing for you to do when you get cash, you pay the loan first. Then the remaining is what you use to do a few things here and there. So basically that's also what's happening with the government, as the debt burden is quite huge. Besides that, and we found that there is a big deficit of around 76 billion, because the government targeted to collect 3.6 trillion, but so far, I think it was by May, April there, they had only collected 2.89. So that clearly indicates there is a big deficit, And given that these are things that have to be done, so the government has to borrow. Now, when you combine high debt burden, unmet revenue collection, and large budget deficit, so the government has no other way other than seeking for other alternatives to increase the revenue. So, when all this was put on the table, so the government had to draft or have a few people to draft the Finance Bill 2023. Unfortunately, it led to high taxation rates among those who are working. The same thing, there were additional taxes that were introduced, like for the contribution towards the affordable housing projects, which was at 3%. Then we found it also increased the withholding tax on digital content creator. VAT on different products were brought in, and especially on petroleum products, which had significant implication on maisha ya wananchi. Now, when all these things were proposed, I think there was an outcry, and Twaweza and other players who represent Wananchi had to try to get to see what can be done, at least for the government to listen to their voices. So it is based on this that Twaweza and CFA sat down and said, the time is quite short and there were no other avenues to have a national survey. So the easiest way was to have something small that could be able to reach a big group of Wananchi, and so that they can be able to share their views. So what we did is to draft a tool which we shared, and it was self-administered, and this happened between May 9 and June 6 of this year. And we are quite fortunate, in fact we are quite overwhelmed by the response rate, because within those 2 weeks, or 2 to 3 weeks, the number of respondents stood at 25,966. So sometimes you can ask, someone can go and do entry for like 5 or 10 times. Sorry, I have to say this as a statistician, there are indicators that we normally look at. And one of them is mean, as even if you enter 10 times, so the percentage won't increase. If you said yes to an indicator and you continue saying that, it won't change anything. So we kept on monitoring from the time the sample size was at 6,000, monitored on how things were changing, and there were minimal changes. So on average, we used to get 1,300 or 1,400 responses per day. And there were a few disclaimers here. One of them being, I think we're able to reach more men than women, because male had a representation of almost 61% compared to 37% among female, and we have 2.1 who did not want to mention their gender. In terms of age distribution, the majority were those aged between 35 and 44. And this is clearly understandable, because these are the people who have access to Twitter, WhatsApp groups, and all that. The same thing with education level, and it clearly indicates that we are able to capture those who are knowledgeable. And the most unfortunate thing, which was one of the disadvantages of our survey, we were not able to reach to another segment of Wananchi, especially those who live in the rural area who don't have access to social media and all that. Although, given that the knowledge level among them was quite low, then whatever we have was sufficient, at least to bring sufficient input towards this dialogue. In terms of occupation, majority of those, 59%, almost 60%, were those who were salaried, of which that was our target group. Because when you look at the bill, and I think you have gone through the bill, the group that will be highly taxed, as in who will bear the highest burden those who are employed, because one, the government have access to where they get money, as in terms of pay and all that. They can easily be targeted. Fuel, they are the people who own cars and all that. So that's why we really wanted to focus on this group. Now, one other thing which we were quite worried about in terms of geographical distribution. The good thing, we were able to have almost normal distribution in terms of representation, because Nairobi had the highest share, of which as you're also aware, most of the industry, most of the those who are employed resides around Nairobi. So we had almost 20% of the respondents coming from Nairobi. Then that was followed by Kiambu. We have Kakamega and all that. And when you compare the distribution against what we have in the census, we find that the representation at geographical level was okay in terms of getting information from all corners of the Republic. Now, the first question that we wanted to ask was awareness or knowledge of the existence of this bill. And from the finding, we found that 90% of those who engaged with our tool, or with the tool that we shared, were aware of the finance bill. So we had made it this way for those who did not interact with it. If you say no, then there was a jump, and then you were taken to another bit, which I will discuss later. So 90%, at least 90% of those who engaged with the tool were able to proceed with the next section. So after that, we wanted to know how many or what proportion were in support of the proposed bill. And from what we have in the next slide, those who strongly support and those who supported were less than, it was around almost 5%, 4 to 5%, which was quite low, given that this is something that will affect all the citizens. In that, over 90% of citizens were not quite happy or do not support the bill, and their reason and concerns that they have raised, of which you are going to hear, and even the alternative ways in which the government can engage in terms of increasing revenue. Now, so after that, we had to list all the items, the ones that are popular. One of them, exemption of LPG gas. I think that's something positive among citizens, because 67% were quite happy about, were in support. And when you combine it with 10% of those who slightly support, we got almost 78%. So their citizen supports that idea. But when it comes to increment of the VAT, because as you're all aware, there was a proposal to tax 35% of the income of among those who earn over 500,000. There was some resistance, although this is not a very big proportion. Around 70% said that they were not supporting the idea of increasing the rate from 30 to 35%. And at the same time, because the bill really targeted those high earners and low earners, there were some exemptions, especially for those who earn below 24%, whereby they're supposed to give a pay of 10%, but because of the exemption, they were not paying. So the government want to drop the exemption, and we found over 90% of citizens said they don't support the move. A clear indicator that, as we have seen before, citizens are really at pain in terms of putting food on the table. So when you tax this group, I think their life will be much more miserable than it is right now. Now, there was this other controversial issue of introducing the house levy of 3%. And I think that's why we had the highest resistance, because over 95% of Kenyans don't support the move. A clear indicator the government need to sit down, rethink, because there's no way they can introduce such an popular policy which will affect citizens, and for them to be able to move on with the promises they had given us during the campaign period. It goes against their manifesto, and there's need for them to listen to the citizen and get to know what to do. The same thing, another item that faced a lot of resistance is the increase of the VAT on petroleum products. Currently it's at 8%, and the proposal was to increase it to 16%. Over 95% citizens are against that, and the implication, because the moment that shoots to 16%, it has implication to all aspects of business, in that you find, because products have to be moved from one corner to the other, so the cost of production will go high, and this we have significant implication on the cost of living. We have also other aspect. As you can see, majority of the proposals were quite unpopular among citizens, because as you can see, the color red is quite prominent among the listed items, because as you can see, we have claims of an expenditure, the introduction of export and investment. So there was something that was introduced to that, as in more levies, which you find over 70 or 65% said no, they don't support it. The same thing, the introduction of investment deduction claim on capital expenditure was to be to increase to 10%. We found over 65% of the citizens, of those who participated in the survey, said it's not a good move. The same thing, the reintroduction of VAT on export services had received high rejection rates at almost 80%. So what does it mean? Because one thing, and we have seen it happen in terms of the industry that we have, Kenya relies mostly on imports, and the same thing, we have a few exports which helps to run the economy. We found the government want to put more taxation on such products, of which citizens are not quite happy with it. Now, we also have other aspects that were quite received favorable feedback from the citizens, especially the reduction of money transfer, whereby the reduction was proposed. They proposed a reduction from 20 to 15%. We found over 70% of Wananchi supports the move. The same thing, lowering the excess duty on internet or telephone data services. The same thing, it received overwhelming support, almost 80%. But when it comes to 15% withholding tax on income and on digital content, there was some resistance, of which over 70% of Kenyans were totally against it. So it didn't go quite well, because within the same clause, within the same item, there was a section that said the big service providers were exempted from paying what they used to pay 1.5%. They no longer be paying, but now taxing the ones, the upcoming content creators, was quite unfair, and citizens think it will affect them. Now, as you can see, we also have other aspects that citizens were not quite happy with. The increase of the turnover from 1% to 3% found, especially among small businesses, that's something that citizens are not quite happy with. And also the issue of depositing 20% of disputed tax amount before lodging an appeal with the High Court. In this case, as you understand, we have these petitions, and the government was proposing that whenever you want to petition or want to raise a petition with KRA, you have to deposit 20%. Citizen, majority of them said that's not the right move. The same thing with lowering the lowering of the band, because before there was a between 1 million to 50 million, the government that the businesses that used to get a profit of amount that is less than 50% used to be taxed 1%, but now there is a proposal to reduce the band to 15%, of which citizens say that's not fair. And at the same time, by reducing it from 50 to 15%, meaning that those earning above 15 will have now to pay the 30% corporate tax. So in terms of business owners, that was not the right thing to do, because most businesses are struggling, and if you happen to remove them from that favorable band and now making them pay corporate tax as other big players, that will affect their profit, and eventually they might end up laying more employees. Now, one more thing that we also wanted to know is we wanted to know so these are additional items like the introduction of VAT to insurance, as in whenever the insurance want to pay you, like if you are involved in an accident and all that. So the government was proposing that you have to pay some VAT, of which citizens were rejected that proposal. But when it comes to the payment of excise duty within 24 hours by betting companies, we got mixed reaction, of which over 40% of the respondents said they support such a move. An introduction of 5% excise duty on human hair, and this would affect, will mostly affect small businesses like those who have kiosks and all that. They were not quite happy because it will affect their income. So besides that, we also wanted to know the public participation. Go back, please. There were slides that were left. In terms of public participation, majority of citizens think that it never happened, because majority of Kenyans, think that the public participation was insufficient, because as you can see, over 80% said it wasn't sufficient. Almost 8% said it was slightly insufficient. Unfortunately, as you can see, it's the minority who said that the public participation was sufficient. And we had to dig deeper to get to know what they think about the process. So we found that majority say that the process was just a way to rubber stamp, as in decisions have already been made. Yes, public participation existed, but the voice was not to be heard, so it was just a matter of formality for them just to raise their voice, but the government has already decided on what it will do without even listening to their concern. And we also have a big portion that said that it even never happened. They only heard it over the media, and they didn't know even where to go and participate in this exercise. Now, besides that, there was also another proposal of increasing the NHIF. Although it was not part of the bill, but it's something that will also affect our earnings. And from what we found is that over 70% of citizens don't support the move. One thing which we explored to understand why, they said the money is not used well. There was a lot of corruption, in that they end up not receiving the services they are supposed to receive. So there were, now, given that Wananchi are not quite happy with the proposals that have been made, we wanted to understand, do they, what proposals do they have at hand so that the government can be able to explore other ways of raising revenue. So some of the things that were raised was follow. One, corruption was highly mentioned, that it's something that is eating into the revenue the government is collecting. As you can see, there was also a lot of wastage. So corruption was, those who mentioned corruption was quite, the number was quite high. That was followed by wastage, whereby you have been having these appointments. If here a certain office has been allocated with a lot of money and all that. So citizens would want the government to address corruption first, empower the organs or the agencies that and would help to address that challenge. The same thing, address wastage that is quite rampant within the government. Another issue that was raised was for the government to broaden the tax base, of which a very small proportion, even less than 40% of Kenyans participate or give tax. So citizens think that this burden is only on a few people. So if that can be expanded to include more people, they believe the government can be able to collect more revenue, and at the same time, some of these taxes rates can be reduced. Another issue that was also raised was lack of transparency that was observed, or that has been observed, whereby here the government has started negotiating with a certain individual, a certain country to borrow and all that. So there was very little public participation, and of which the government should put these things to the public such that they can be able to scrutinize. So for the government to be able to help or address all this concern, one, they have to reduce corruption. Issues to do with wastage have to be addressed. Broaden the tax base, as I've mentioned, and also promote transparency on expenditure. So if they can be able to address that, will be much more willing to pay tax. So what's the way forward now? And I'm so happy because I think, given that we have raised our voices, the government has come to, or it has come to a point where the government has to sit down and really listen to Wananchi concern. So these are some of the proposals that has been made, that they need to see the loopholes that exist, broaden the tax base, also strengthen anti-corruption agencies and put people who are more effective and efficient. Also implement strict measures to reduce wastage in the government, increase transparency, and encourage public participation that, as we have seen, is quite low, and citizens think it's important for their voices to be heard. So what's the way forward? Given that we have already made our submission, the Core Uchumi has already made its submission, and in addition to that, we have been able to raise the voices of Wananchi. It's now a high time for the government to sit down, get to understand the concerns that have been raised, and if they're able to address them, from what you found, or what we found at the beginning, that 85% of Kenyans are willing to pay tax because they understand that there's no way the government can run without the revenue they are collecting, then compliance will increase, or we rise, or to something to do with 90 or 95%. And besides that, they think, or citizens think, that some of these rates can also reduce, and which would one of the incentive for them to be compliant. That's all we had for today, and I would welcome whoever has a question so that we can be able to push this agenda. Thank you, and God bless you.
That was very detailed. I mean, step to step, the whole context, that flow was amazing. And just to summarize, to highlight, it was very interesting, and I think for the next session, our speakers probably will give us this answer. It's really very interesting that in many developed countries especially, and I understand that the citizen have a clear perception and understanding of why to pay taxation, to pay tax is very important. They always say yes. We understand. It's very important. It's not that they don't understand, and they always said we support it. Majority of them, they always said, you know what, we support it. But it's usually very funny when it comes to practice. As James had shared on a previous study which were done, almost 2-3 years ago, and then subsequent years, almost 40% said, you know what, I don't know, even me, I'll say the same. Given a choice, sitalipa. I can see people nodding here. Wangapi wanasema given a choice, kama ngekoko payslip awayoni hatalipa. Wangapi? Well, at least I have few honest people, 3 honest people. So literally out of the 20, 30 of us, we are the only, don't worry. Sisi ndio tutakwenda mbinguni, usijali. So it's very interesting that almost as they said, actually they paid because they have any other choice. Ingenikuwa kwamba is you voluntarily pay this. You would have not seen there. But they do understand that it's for service delivery, is to run the country. That part they understand. And when you do a deep dive, they say they say the tax is high. I do not know. So our next speaker during the discussion will tell us. Because some Uganda friend of mine challenged me. They said, Melania, Kenyans don't pay more taxes than Ugandans. And it's actually true. When we did analysis, we realized Uganda, even their pay is up to 40%, and the VAT is 18%. So he said, what is all this noise? So maybe our speakers can, when we sit there, they will tell us why in Kenya there is that feeling. Of course, people say they usually kitu kidogo ndo inafanya we feel more tax, but there is argument in the region. We are not that taxed. They have to be. We have to be clear that the noise is about. And then of course they argue that also the money is not enough. Pesa itoshi. But my Tanzania people will tell you, they'll even be surprised. To them, Kenya wanalipa pesa nyingi sana. So all those arguments, of course, and the biggest always, which there's usually a pushback, the issue of lack of transparency and accountability in terms of the money which is being collected. I think when you do a deep dive on a qualitative on that, you'll establish what came out is actually that than anything else. Actually, it's not even the tax are high or we don't have enough income. I think it was that we don't know how this money is being spent. The service which we anticipate that we will get from these services, we can't see them, they're very lacking. And now, what James has shared from the finding, overall, Kenyans just do not want any kind of increment. Yani, kitu yote kisema onge panda juu, kitu yote ambayo nasema enda juu, hata wataki kusikia. So for our next preliminary, I'll be calling our 4 speakers from the coalition, and that is Diana. So we have Diana from TISA. We have Purity from is a youth coordinator. We have Wilfred, Social Justice Center, and then Dennis Orengo, a concerned citizen. I am here with my co-MC, so nitampatia.
Utachanganya ndimi ama? Okay, fine, thanks. So thanks, Belani. We request the panelists to move in front. I think there was we didn't have a pre-arrangement, but we have some 2 seats, so Purity and the other one is?
Purity to Diana.
Yeah, as they move to the front, let me also add my voice and write on James. That was a wonderful presentation. And as as Oko Chubi and as CFA, we are not faulting the government for wanting to raise revenue. You know, the government has to raise revenue to finance the budget so that they are able to deliver services. But our concern is the how. The how here is the issue. Okay? So the how for the government to us is so detrimental to the public, the economic well-being of the public. And that is why we are suggesting, alternatives like curbing corruption. We know in Kenya, both at the national and the county level, corruption is already budgeted for. That budget that will be read in Parliament already has corruption in it. Then reduction of wastage. We've seen cases where we have a delegation of more than 100 people going to witness a swearing in of a president somewhere. That's our culture. And then probably in tax base, so having more people pay taxes, having more businesses pay taxes, so that the burden of tax is spread. When it is spread broadly, then the burden is less felt by the public. Then promoting transparency, of course. The MTEF, the medium-term expenditure framework, requires that every time the government is planning for the next fiscal year, and at the same time, the government is reporting what they have, the expenditures, the fiscal performance of the previous year, and also implementing at the same time. So all those three should be as transparent as possible. The public, CSOs, non-state actors need to know what the government is working on, their plans for the next fiscal year, what they're implementing, and also report on the past fiscal performance. So our panelists, we have the findings of the KAP survey. As a core Uchumi, we have our proposals. We have the questions here, so Melanie, you will take the first one, please. Okay.
Thank you very much, John. So my first question is the question which I started when we were discussing, and I think any of us can answer that particular question. Why the contradiction between perception, understanding, and action amongst Kenya when it comes to taxation? What is causing this mislink that we do understand we have to pay taxes, we understand what they're being used for, but given a choice, I won't pay it. So that is where I'll start with that one, and then piggybacking on that, which you can do is assume all of us were to take that perception of we all won't pay taxes. What next? What will happen? What should we do? And as government, what should be the way forward with that regards? Asante.
Anyone can go. Okay. Good morning. I'm Diana Gishenko. The National Coordinator, TISA, and a member of Okoa Uchumi. Now, is there a mislink, really? I think it's more of a clarification that all Kenyans know that government services are not free services. They are services that are provided because taxpayers pay tax. So it is not Ruto, it was never Uhuru or Kibaki that gave us services. It was always our tax that gave us those services that we were entitled to. And because as rights holders, we are entitled to rights, we understand we have a responsibility to pay tax. But how do we pay tax to a government that we do not trust? To a government shouted, we lose your 2 billion in tax every day. Now come pay another 2 billion every day so that we steal. At that point, it will be very, very problematic to pay. It would actually be folly. It would be stupid to pay tax to people who cannot utilize it properly. And look at history. When we had a major transition from being a one-party state in 2002, the government that came in recorded a very, very significant increase in collection of tax. It is the government that was able to redeem the highest debt then. It wasn't 9 trillion, it was barely 1 trillion, but based on the size of our economy, it was significant. Redeemed it, and they didn't need to borrow until 2007 when we had a conflict. We were living within our means. It is actually recorded that Kenyans were at their happiest. 2004, watu walikuwa wanajisikia. We had money in our pocket, every child was in school with free education. That people were okay to move to those public schools that were crowded because something had shifted and services were working for people. Now, we are increasing income tax for certain category, and we are taxing the lowest bracket. We are going to increase turnover tax. So anybody, including, let's use boda. Yesterday they told us they spend 400 in fuel to be able to make about 600 a day before they repay their loans and so on. So if you're making anything about 1,350, not in profit, your daily sales. So all Uber, Bolt drivers, when you huwa wanagonga 2,500, they must pay 3% turnover tax daily. Yesterday there was a mama mboga who said previously they would make sales of 1,200. But because of the increase in the prices of groceries, right now for them to make a profit of 100, 200, they will have made sales of 2,000. They are part of this turnover tax where they must pay 3%. These are the people you're telling pay 3%, but their children are out of school. Why? Because how are children in secondary school, public secondary schools surviving? The parents' associations have now been asked to contribute to textbooks, to contribute to exercise books. They need to contribute to remedial tuition. Why? Because the teachers do not have fare to come to school. They have not been paid. So you need to contribute to that particular fare. In some school wameambiwa tuchange pesa ya stima isikatwe. Why? Because capitation for education has not been disbursed to public schools. NHIF, which has also been increased, is collapsing. So mgonjwa wangu, we had to contribute, and now you want us to increase NHIF and even create a new levy when you cannot manage the current fund. It is not a contradiction. It is actually a loud voice of Kenyans saying you're not leading and governing our public finance right. I am hoping if there is anything, if the government doesn't listen to anything else, it is that loud voice, which started with the boycott in election, fewer people participated, and now the highest participation in the finance bill and budget making process. This government is not being run right. I'll pause there and I'll share more sentiments.
Thank you, Diana. So at the end, I heard you saying very clearly that this is actually a vote of protest. But I'm saying, yes, I understand the value of it. I am willing to do so. But you know what? I won't do it. Yes. And you know, because of what? I can't even know where that money is going to. So that is really...
But please note that I also don't have the money.
Yes. The disposable income is not sufficient enough even to do so. So it's a double edge that I don't have the money. Even if I had it, then this would have been my stand. I'll go to Purity. Yeah? Purity, I want to hear from you, from the youth perspective. I think Diana gave us all that whole context of that vote of protest. And for youth, having seen the finding and having read the bill, because I know you have passionately, I mean, I saw you nodding when the findings were being shown, and you were like, oh, I am one of the respondents. I said something about it. Tell me from the youth perspective, what is the worst from this amendment, the worst which you think? You know, that gatekeeper which, assume from the 70, I think, is it, are there, how many amendments are there, John? Are they up to 80?
What?
The amendments, the finance bill.
8 something.
Yes, so out of those many, which top 5 you think this one have to go? Yani hii hamna mjadala, yani hii hamna mazungumzo. Waswahili wanasema hamna mjadala, hamna mazungumzo. This one has to go. And what also 5 you think, you know, it can be discussed. Tunaweza kujadiliana kuhusu. And then the last 5 which you think this is okay, you know, it can pass. Because I know the finding, if you look at the finding, any increment in any reduction is sour, but you know, we also have to be practical on what takes. Assume you have that opportunity to make that particular change. What would be your take, please?
To begin with, my name is Pete from Collaborative Center for Gender and Development. I'm a young person and a woman, to be specific. Sex, pronouns she, her. Number 1, tunajitanga sisi ni mahasla wa hii gava. Tuliamka last year, tukichapa makuu, voting, campaign, manini, tukakuwa mabloggers wa hii gava. Tukakuwa wasenyeta, tukacompose masong and creatives. Tukakuwa wale wasenye tunamshana morning, saa 9, ebu twende tukavote. Tukakuwa wale wasenye tutoki kwa polling station, in the name of tunachunga kura. It was our time to eat. It was our time to sprout out and blossom. But little did we know, mambo yalikuwa yanachemka. Then this year, tunamka tu asubuhi tunapata finance bill. Ukiangalia number 1, ile place yenye my youth actually wana penetrate through na vipoa sana ni creatives industry. And I've worked with some of them and I know how much their rate cards are. Quite expensive. Then tunasema to tax at 15%. I think for me, an equality taxation, it should be progressive. Uwezamka asubuhi unaniambia nilipe 15 from 5%. From what angle, what indicators inform that increment? But kama ingekuwa kitu yenye iko progressive, I don't think creatives ingeachwa hivyo. Because if you're making money, saizi tuko na talanta hela. So why are we coming up with a council or something to create employment, but the place that we feel we are going to harvest more, it's the least place that we want to tax. So I think for me, we can still argue on creatives taxation. Either to itoe from 15, it would be 7 or 6, but we must get something from the creatives. Because at the end of the day, the government has to have money to ensure that technology is working for me. The government has to do something for the all resource centers to function in this country. That any young person, whichever part of the country you are coming from, unaweza kwa resource center yako yapo hivi constituency, na unachapa hustle yako vifiti, unaandika poem, una compose song, because government has invested a lot to ensure that the infrastructure is working. Another thing that I think this one, yes, on the National Housing Development Fund. I don't kuna unamsay hii country ataki kuown nyumba. Anyone mwenye ataki kukuwa na hao, ni nani hii country? Hakuna. We are willing to pay that tax as long as tuambiwe, I am assured that ataki nikatai tax. What is the probability of me as a young person going to own that house? Juu ile kozeti ile nyezi walijenga Ngara. Who are the owners of that house? Did we get just Kawanjiku somewhere, akona cash, akona mado, akenda kabaitu the entire building at the expense of 100 Kenyans who are supposed to be the main beneficiary of those houses? But the thing is, the wording of the development funding. Do we want affordable housing? Do we want social housing, or do we want a home? And I think for me, mimi nataka home. Because when you look at the affordability, I look at, as long as it's simple that I can just do the sheltering, it's done. But the moment I say, as Kenyans, we want a home, we're looking at the safety and security of our children. We're looking at a place where the recreation facilities are also going to be available. We're looking at in a home where school will be closer to the homes, the roads will be good, the water will be running. So as much as we say that we want to own these houses, are we willing to pay the 3%? Because for me, 3% nilifanya calculation iko ni 5K. Around 5 to 6K. I'm looking at my pay slip and I'm like, well, no way. How am I going to check out another 6,000? Now your 6,000 inanisukumia maisha, inanilipia transport per month. So that means I'll have another extra money from my pay slip, which I don't think I'm even going to afford. Another thing that I think wasn't also good with me is the beauty industry. Hakuna demo nyataki kukapoa. Hata siku hizi tuko na maboys wanatupata competition. Uliona for the first time, I came to learn kuna fake beards. Maze, unaona tu maboys wanaparindanate tu kwa streets perambulating with beards. They're like, whoa, look at that guy. Little did we know that you can still fake beards. But the beauty economy has employed many, many women. That today, if you say that you're introducing taxation on the beauty economy, unajua price itabaki hivyo, but the volume of braids is going to reduce. So if I use 8 braids, it's going to shoot out to 4 more braids. Am I willing to keep up? Ama nitasema saizi nataka change, ni shave, it is easy to maintain. Then karo wengi sana wanaenda lose job. And I think the last one is on the cellular thing. I think we've reached a point in the country where we no longer work with cash. Because the mobile money transfer has made it easy. Unaenda kwa madhe pale hivi kwa mboga, unamlipa akona pay bill, unamlipa 10 bob, unamlipa 20 bob. But inafika point sasa hii tax bill, the finance bill inaniambia hata nikitumia madhe 10 bob, I'm going to pay extra 2 shillings. I don't think I'm ready to do that. I am not. But I think on the wins that could have really gone well, it's only that it has already been dropped, the creative industry. I think it is a new avenue for revenue, a new area for the government to actually source for revenue. So I don't think it shouldn't be dropped like that, but we should look at the mechanism on how that will go and work out. Are we going to make it as a progressive taxation? Another win for me is it was around the housing, though I'm still having my own issues. Because number one, I'm not sure that I'm gonna own a home, and any other youth that I know is going to own that affordable home. But I think it is a win, because I think for the first time, we have a bill that is talking about the housing agenda in this country. We're looking at the number of job creation is going to create. But as John said, even corruption is budgeted for. As much as we're talking about the housing agenda, there is a bill that is already tabled and it is in discussion on the procurement. That why should an MP start to think about the procurement penalties to be more administrative, and yet you're looking at the coming major project. Do we think that this is one of the, as in one of the things that is paving way on the housing agenda, because there'll be huge procurement. We don't want people to mess up with the little money that Kenyans earn. And I think for me, the place of gender will also be very critical. As much as we have the social contract to the Kenya government regime that came on board, the women agenda, but the same government is also trying to limit the resilience of women in economy. So I think for me, those are the things that I think we have the gains and the losses in the proposed finance bill.
Thank you very much, Purity. I mean, from the youth, I can hear the passion in terms of, the digital and the creative industry, and the opportunity which you're saying that they are there, and it's only probably the government should stop being, should I say, lazy. and be more proactive. So Dennis, I'll come to you. You've had the two lovely ladies, the issue of lack of trust, the issue of poor accountability and transparency in terms of the venue which we collect. Purity there mentioned an non-enabling environment. I mean, him as a creative person, as digital person, and I think many business people always complain. I've talked to several hawkers and they said, I asked them, kwa nini mtaka kulipa kanjo ile pesa yao? Wanasema, madam, sio ataka kulipa kanjo pesa yao. Kwanza it ad hoc. You don't even understand who are you paying, what are you paying for. And then the environment ambao wanafanyia kazi. Yani hii pesa inalipwa ya nini? So unajua, when as a buyer, if you are buying something, you want to know, why am I paying for this? So there's all those of issue. And to you as a concerned citizen with any establishment or organized institution, my question, which I want to hear from you, of course, will open the floor for the guys to other people, to the ladies and the gentlemen, both online and in-house, to also pose some question to you or comment for the discussion. When I started, one of the things which my fellow people from our neighboring region, the Tanzania and Uganda, when they saw us, when they get this is of course they admire Kenya. They say, wa Kenya bwana, ni bwana, akili zenu mnazijua wenyewe, and we just know ourselves. And we said, mbona tayo kodi mbona sio nyingi? They don't understand that. Why does it feel in Kenya kwamba kodi ni kubwa kuliko dunia nzima? Dennis probably could share that element. Why does it feel in Kenya kuna hasira nyingi kuliko sehemu yote ile? Asante.
Shukran. So thank you everyone, and first I want to thank the organizers of this meeting for calling this session very early in the morning. At least by 11 we are done. Why am I saying that? Because if you would have extended this session, people would have started sleeping from 12 noon. Because in this country, nowadays no one is sleeping. The poor are not sleeping because they are angry. And the rich are not sleeping because the poor are awake and angry. So no one is sleeping. If you come to my area of Mathare, boys roam around the whole night, you see? And who are our neighbors? Mutaiga, just across the road. If you go to Kibera, the same. And if you are awake in Mathare, a person who is a resident of Mutaiga cannot pretend to be sleeping, you see? So the triple effect, no one is gaining out of this crisis. People who think are gaining and stealing from government coffers and building high walls, their neighbors have come up with creative ways of climbing those electric fences, you see? So it is up to no one's gain. That's why we are calling upon dialogue. Because in as much as you are suffering this side of the road, the other side are also threatened. And they have tried to kill so many boys, but the more they kill, the more the situation escalates. So our neighbors from Tanzania and even Uganda are really wondering why we are not willing to pay more. But have they ever checked on our corruption index as a country? We are being ranked by failed states, Pakistan, Somalia, in terms of corruption index. You see? Tanzanians and Ugandans don't feature anywhere. And we always ask ourselves, right now if you go to a public hospital, the residents of Mathare go to Mama Lucy, and if you go to Mama Lucy, you'll never find any drugs. We know where they stay, because during politics, they come to mobilize us in slums, and they show us where they live. So we go there, and they are private roads, they have water. Actually, if you go where they stay, you'd think it's not part of this country. So we are asking, are there wenye inchi na wananchi? You see? So we want equality in terms of service provision, and we want equality especially in terms of public participation, as our first speaker highlighted. They come and conducting public participation forums, but actually they've rubber stamped. And what we've discovered in informal settlements and even as a concerned citizen is nowadays there's public participation and participating publicly. They come, yes, they come with huge documents, read for you things that they know we won't understand in terms of billions, and they'll tell us, hii yote ni Uhuru alisababisha, things are not moving right, you see? And for us, we signed the forms and we said public participation was done, yet they were just participating publicly. So in short, we don't have any issue as Kenyans in terms of contributing to taxes. We want a developed country, but the question is, how many of us will benefit from those taxes? Why reside in Mathare? There are affordable housing in Pangani. When they were being constructed, we had high hopes that the first people to be relocated will be Mathare residents. Then when you wametolewa in a certain section, inabomolewa, they develop it. One day we woke up and we found people hanging clothes in those affordable housing. You see? We were only told a section of MCS managed to get those houses. The rest, we don't know where they came from to date. So that is our problem as citizens. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dennis. I was listening to you and I was feeling so much pain. The class struggle and, the rule and conquer, and that messaging is, to me, is very dangerous. That, in fact, for the housing, that Tuta will take from the rich, and then we will, I do not know that model. I don't know how many, maybe because we are the class struggle, so they will say that, unaona matajiri hawataki. There's always that, only for them to, when when the news eventually came, to only see the 18%. Kwamba hata hiyo yetu ni kidogo hata kuliko hizo za, because when you look at amendment, agriculture, ukiangalia hiyo, the petroleum, because petroleum inakwenda kuua kila mtu. So it was really interesting to see that. So I'll leave it to John here to actually make comment for someone online, and then I'll open it to the floor.
Thank you so much, Melanie, and thanks for the panelists. We have an online panelist in the name of Wilfred Olal. I don't know whether, Wilfred, you can hear us from Social Justice Center. Wilfred, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you. Probably the IT guys, could you work on the volume, please? So we hear him, but quite faintly. Yeah. So, Wilfred, thanks for joining us, and I hope you joined the discussion at early enough, and even saw the presentation that was made by James. One of the reasons why our budget is becoming expensive to finance is the issue of corruption. We know that there's budgeted corruption in the budget, both at the national and the county level. So, from your perspective, how do we address this menace of corruption as CSOs and as citizens? Thank you.
Yeah, personally, first I like to appreciate the organizers of this meeting, and I apologize that I thought I will be there in person, that some issues came up in the morning. So in terms of, I also want to appreciate the good job that the research has done. I want to concur, sisi watu wa ground, that it has spoken to what hata sisi we are faced in our in our organizing work. It is true that 90% of Kenyans don't support the finance bill. And the issue of corruption, I think most of the time Kenyans have let the leaders to be the ones fighting corruption, and the leaders are the corrupt people. Last week, I was imagining that NHIF does not have money. Yet every month, Kenyans are, the money is given from their salaries to support NHIF. There are some people who even pay, who go to pay directly because of the medical cover. Then you go to the hospital, you are told NHIF hawajatuma pesa. That is already a call for revolution. You can't have, where's the money? So I think, in my opinion, Kenyans should stop letting the leaders to be the ones to fight corruption, because they are the most corrupt. Kenyans should be more proactive. Don't allow your salary to be taxed, then that money disappears and you do nothing about it. Last week we had a protest against the finance bill. Today we are having another protest just to say no to the finance bill. Countries that have had revolutions, it is because the citizens have decided to take the matters in their own hands and to use the powers that they have, either in the constitution or that they know that they have in their numbers, to give the country a direction. And this is what happens if the little noise that people have made the last few weeks, they have managed now to reduce the housing tax from 3 to 1.5. What if we continue putting more pressure? Don't we think we will push them further? Because it means that they have felt the impact of Wananchi. Fighting corruption, one, Kenyans must reject the way government is spending our resources. I still don't understand why we have 50 CAS, yet we have a CS, cabinet secretary, and a principal secretary. Why do you need another CAS? For what? And then we say, that's how we'll reduce our wage bill. We are increasing instead of reducing. Two, there's something that Omtata has talked about last week and this week, when he said, can we audit our debt? Because according to him, and according to the records that are in parliament, we've paid all our debts and we've overpaid. Considering that parliament is supposed to approve all the debts before they are taken. So it means there's an illegality where money has been borrowed without the consent from parliament. And we can't account for all this money. During Uhuru's time, we are still talking about the Eurobond, the first Eurobond, which did not even reach the country. So, according to me, citizens must stop whining in their safe spaces and behind their computers. Citizens must rise up, join the streets. There's a reason why when you go to the street, there's always the police. And when you are on Twitter, you can make noise the whole day, abusing people, the president, and nothing will happen. Because they know the power of citizen action, the power of people's agency. That is why my route to fight this government is never through discussions. They will lie to us. The current government are the biggest liars. They are very good in lying. Tumetenga, tutapanga. Right now, they have turned all our young people into mjengo workers that are waiting for kazi ya mjengo. Last year, it was kazi ya mtaro. That's how they are taking the youth. Look at the opportunities that youth have that the government is trying to take away. The boda, you've heard what Diana said. Boda industry. Serikali ilikuwa ya mama mboga na boda. Mama mboga na boda who are making over 1,300, 3% tax. Instead of trying to increase the purchasing power so that at least people can have money for the economy to move. So for me, my route is one, people must take action. People must join the streets. People must make noise, both online and offline. And people must stop being deceived by the politicians. I'll stop there, Santi.
So thanks so much, Wilfred. And I specifically like your point about the bloated public service. With corruption running in our veins in the country, when you bloat the public service, you are increasing the chances of wanton abuse and misuse of public resources. I watched with a lot of pain. In fact, tears welled my eyes when I saw a hawker. This was in the public domain, really crying to the president that, why are you doing this to us at the time of appointing the CSS? Someone like, I'm sorry to mention names, Kidero, Dr. Kidero, does he really require a job, really? Does he really require a job? Why pay Kidero 1 million Kenya shillings, yet their hawkers were struggling to put sukuma wiki and ugali on the table, and then you still come back and take the little that they have. So thank you so much, Wilfred. Please stay put, because we're soon going to the floor to get questions, and there could be some directed to you. My last question is to Dennis. Dennis, there was a proposal. I don't know what has happened with the audio, but I hope you can hear me. There's a proposal to increase income tax of those earning $500,000 and above by 5%. That is from 30 to 35%. On the survey that we conducted, 28% supported the idea and 72% opposed. Probably they are within that bracket, and they feel they'll be affected. What's your opinion? Should we tax the rich more to help the government raise funds or revenue for this budget or not? What's your opinion?
No, and then just to add that, because there have been a controversy of who is a rich person. I mean, is they have $1 million income suffice to say huyu ni tajiri? Yani tajiri, kwa sababu I think the definition of tajiri ni nani, I think that is where even when we did a deep dive is where the controversy starts. So kuna, should we tax more rich as John has asked, as compared to poor? Yet, of course, the rich will say, but we're getting the same service, so that argument. And then the threshold. What threshold is isemekane hawa ni matajiri? Thank you, Dennis. Karibu.
Thank you. So, I'll say that's a fallacy, and I'm glad the greatest education always happens outside the classroom. And what we always say at the community level is we should always strive as much as possible to emancipate ourselves from mental slavery. Because when we are not enlightened, and these things will never be taught in school. Today, if you bring school children or even university students here, government will say you are radicalizing Kenyans. You start in your own curriculum, which is illegal, you see? And that's a very huge fallacy, that increasing income tax for the employed will solve our problems. It cannot. I remember last year, KRA missed lots of target. Government could not even raise money through treasury bills and bonds. And what is the long-term effect to this? And he just told us, employers are saying we will lay off people. And we know that black tax is real. You might be one person and people depending on you are so many. So what will be the long-term effect to this? It means so many people will become unemployed, so many people will drop out of schools. We will start going back to fighting child marriages. Crime will shoot up, you see, and we'll have a country that is lawless, where nothing is moving, nothing is working out. So as people have always argued, as economists have always advised that instead of taxing abscond paying taxes, because you being overtaxed, there's nothing out of it, and you resort to absconding completely payment of these taxes, and you say everyone to carry their own burden. So to me, I wouldn't advocate for increase in income tax, because Kenyans are already feeling the pinch, and nowadays even few people can afford to go to India to seek medical services, you see? So even those who are employed are already struggling. On Saturday, we were at an apartment next to State House Road, and 2 people were getting auctioned, you see? So it means that if now the people we call middle class can no longer service their loans and are getting auctioned, it means we are at a very wrong place in the society. Yes.
Thank you very much, Dennis. I love when you are mentioning about that, creating the tax base by creating income. It really touched me, because when I'm looking at statistics, which a big share for the by National Bureau of Statistics, the Kenyans who actually have stable income, the regular income earners, they're not more than 15%. So imagine, and then we have a whole 8%, so 80% to the casual laborers, you know, the income is ad hoc, is infrequent. So can you imagine that the 15% compared to 85, if it should have been reverse, you know, then your argument is actually very valid, that there won't be that strain of trying to pick here, pocket here. So if we could have more industry, as you're saying, a lot of manufacturing, you know, the old Kenya, yeah? You know, the river tax, the Sony, when all those, you know, everybody is almost in the workforce, then you have many more people to tax. But right now, the 15, and this is even dwindling. This is all like 3 or 4 years ago. So can you imagine Nahali, Vile Nimbaya, and then as you're mentioning, employers are saying, you know what, we'll just have to, you either have to take a calorie cut. I know people literally who have taken 50% of calorie tax. There are people 6 months hawajalipwa mshahara ndani ya serikali na nje ya serikali, and then now you have to be laid off. Sasa nashangata mwisho wa siku, as you're saying, will stagnate. So thank you so much. So for now, I'll now welcome the floor, both online. Sarah, can you, who is managing the online team? Feedback, please, yeah. So we'll take around probably 5 or so questions. You can refer to any specific person to answer. You feel like they want them to answer, the panelists. Please note, we have 3 panel member and 1 Olal who is online. So you can throw the question either to any of them to answer, or to any specific person. 5 to 7 questions to start with. Mkono juu. Okay. 1. Next. 2. Okay. 2 on the floor. Silpa, kuna watu wangapi huko online? So you can read for us the question online, and then I'll have the 2. So then probably when you ask me the question, you can say your name and where you do come from in terms of organization. So we can start with Silba, online person. Nani huyo? Kama hajasema ni nani, msome tu.
Steven Osedo and Diana, the government seems to have succeeded in distracting the public by giving much attention to housing less, forgetting other very problematic proposals. Now that they have reduced it to 1.5%, what happens to other proposals like VAT, petroleum products?
Okay.
So I just
yes. So that, and then because we want to collect like 5, and then they can respond.
Okay. So my name is Fidialis from TI Kenya, also a member of Uchumi. My concern is on public participation. Thank you. I was saying my name is Fidialis Mutike from TI Kenya.
My concern has been thrown around the issue of public participation. I think it has been an issue for many years since the introduction with the new, no longer the current constitution. On the issue of, and Dennis said that now we have people participating publicly, not public participation. So what is the recommendation around it? Because you see, mostly there are recommendations in the past that have been around structured kind of public participation where the CSOs can organize and go present a memorandum. We have the professional organizations presenting their own. But now what happens to the normal citizen who is maybe not much equipped with information, but you see they know what they want. For example, with the current conversation going on the finance bill, they know what they want. If it is a road, for example, on the issues of budget, if it is a road that they want prioritized, they know that is what they want. But now to present that and for that information to reach the relevant people, I think we need some actionable recommendation around it on how we are going to bring the normal or the Wanjiko on the table. Then on the issue of taxes, paying taxes, and the negativity on people don't actually want to pay taxes. And Diana has pointed out on the issue of we do not have money, number one. Number two, you already, even the current government say that through one of their own, that the government is extremely wasteful. And they are very deliberate about it. But now on the issue of having something positive around it, because we also have a section of us advocating for domestic resource mobilization and having less and less of external debt. But that has to be done through domestic raising taxes. But now we need to have a positive conversation around it with, and that has to be tied to the issue of public service. Are our services working for us? And on the issue of, at the heart of every government should be education and health, but we seem so much to prioritize infrastructural projects and forget about the real issues that matter. So how do we have a positive conversation around taxation to ensure that I'm actually willing to pay taxes even without everyone knocking at my door every day to remind me to pay taxes? Thank you.
Gentleman there,
Good morning, guys. My name is Hebrews Rono from Tuko Media Limited. My question goes to Diana Gishengo. I love the background you've given about multi-party in 2002 and the National Accord in 2007. With all this buzz going on, there are people who are telling us we need to suffer for maybe in the next 1 year or 2 years, and then after there we can now bask in the sun. How is it practical? How soon is this 2 years? Because their promises seem to come in 6 months, in 2 years, in 3 years. Bado tunapanga. Thanks.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Dennis Sikuri, a member of Social Justice Center, and my question would be directed to Orengo. Dennis, you've talked about class struggle, and as you can remember, during our past election, there was an issue of class whereby we had the narrative of dynasty versus hustler. And currently, we are having a conversation on wealth inequalities, also in our this proposed bill. So what what kind of, or other ways can we settle these or reduce these wealth inequalities whereby we have big landowners in Kenya? Should we overtax them so that we generate revenue for the government? Or what will be some of your proposals?
Number of questions, so I am going to take the liberty of at least allowing all of the panel members to talk. So, Diana, I will give you, the 1.5 levy, which has now the government proposing to reduce. So they've gone back to, you remember the Uhuru last year, they had proposed similar numbers, so I think they've gone back, which people still throw it, so you'll tell us. So what happened to the other? Because it seemed like the frontier for the levy is higher than, all those other even worse amendments. And then Diana, also you'll take us through, you'll talk us through the domestic mobilization, as the lady from TIA has mentioned. How do we sell this particular proposition in terms of the operationalization? How do you operationalize it? How do we make citizens come on board on this? As when Dennis talking, he said, the treasury bill, I'm one of those many investors who love buying it, but this time, every time, and I know a number of our Chama friends, some other friends, they also buy them, but all of a sudden, no one wants to buy them, and they tell you, hey, usinunua huko, ukinunua, iyo pesa kurudi, yes, there is that fear of even the annual ones, kila mtu anaogopa, and if you look at the CBK, they have reintroduced, it is, they've pulled out, introduced, so it's really concerning. So, and then for Dennis, I think as Sikuri has mentioned, I've seen you are very passionate on the Karl Marx, the class struggle. How do we ensure that there's a class struggle, and then there's also the issue of inequality, and also the people. There are always kind of proponent and people saying, how do we? Which is the best model of reducing inequality? Should we take from poor, rich to give poor? I mean, do we have economical model with a social, human touch? The Amartya theories of, how do we address this? And then to purity, the public participation element. I think Dennis actually was very clear on that it has become tokenistic. We are there as decoration, we are just tunapamba, tumekuwa mapambo. How do we make it even more engaging, more meaningful? The 7 ladder of participation. How do we move from just being informed, rubber stamping, until to that, the biggest rank of public participation? Anyone can start. Olal, don't worry, for the next round, we will let you know. Filbert, the person online, that one has already been addressed. Hebrew is asking, and that one I won't even give it to Diana. I'll have Olal share that. Wasole unasema uvumilivu, subira. Tunasemaje? Subira vuta heri, yani macheo, yani they said in English is what? Glory come after dawn, si ndio? Yani baada ya mateso, umeona haya Olali, jamani, umemsikia nani Hebrew anakuambia baada dhiki fahari, wameambiwa miaka 2, lakini sasa wanaona miaka inaenda, lakini bado tupo pale pale. In fact, once we are going back. So what should we do that? I know Olal, you are ni barabara, unataka tukimbie kwa barabara, mshaambiwa TikTok warriors. So Olal, how can you incentivize us to kubaki ndani ya dhiki, na dhiki jamani, tubaki baada ya muda gani, and how do Kenya come out of this? So Olal, maybe you can start baada, kwa sababu uko online, tutakupatia more privilege kuliko sisi ambao tuko huko. Olal, karibu. Olal. Tumempoteza. But as we are waiting for Lal, maybe Purity, you can tell us how do you make participation more meaningful, as opposed to decorative or tokenism?
Thank you. I remember Kiprono just mentioned that tuko na 2 years, tuvumilie kidogo 2 years. Usheske ile ndoto. Because fixing economy takes a while. And looking at Kenya, if we go by all the proposals that again the public is actually bringing on the table, we have countries in the world where you have money in your bank but you cannot access it. So tukisema pesa itatoka hapa ndani internally within Kenya, utakuwa unafanya job, you get paid, but the government will dictate on how much you can access. So, but when you talk about public participation, that we have now a new term that we are participating publicly, which is good. Because even here, I really thank the organizers, because at least today we have the youth voice, which people think young people, like the way Ola has said, and I've been fighting about it everywhere I go, that the young people of this nation, kazi yetu ni kuclean mabarabara na mitaro na kokota takataka. Who said that is the only productive engagement that the young people of this nation can offer? That right now, the majority of the people that the government has already projected are going to benefit from the construction are the young people. Don't we have anything else that the young people can offer? We can actually offer designing and giving how those houses should look like. We can actually be the designers, the interior deco guys, sisi si tu watu wa kujenga, kumixa, as much as that is what is going to offer to us, but we want it to be decent. Atusemi kazi yoyote ni mbaya, but the participation of it is that the young people are saying, let all the proposals be decent. Isikuwe tu, amkukua na kazi, sasa ndio hii kazi ufanye. But the working environment should actually be good. But in the spirit of public participation, I think the world is evolving and there is more uptake of technology that at times we really don't have to meet in person. But what other alternatives are we going to create? That I saw the committee was meeting the public in giving their proposal and just doing their memo reading. But how many people knew about that? Am I going there to parliament? I say I am here as Purity representing the young people. I might not even be given the opportunity. But when I go to Twitter, do my tweets and tag the chair, he will actually get the attention. And you will see that this one, honestly, it has to work. If I do the creatives, where the creative in all these, that the only discussion that they might be interested in is about their the proposal to increase their withholding tax. How are they packaging this? In form of songs, in form of painting, in form of drawing, in form of, as in anything artistic. How, where are the writers to write it down in a language that I can understand? Because for people to be triggered, to be more interested in financial matters, there's something that has been touched that is really concerning me. If I tell Mama Mboga today, Mom, usipoongea, hii stole kwenye unalipanga kanjo 50 bob, from next month utakuwa unalipa so. She will see no need of attending any public participation. But the moment I tell her the thing that is going to affect her, if today again we tell all the cosmetic people that unajua like if finance bill ikipita, azilutapata ma clients. Because wase wigs itakuanga expensive, wase wa nails pia hawatakuwa like, hey, okay, I am going to lose my job. If you tell the constructors that the employers that if this bill goes through, you are going to incur more costs. Atasema, it is either I lay off some people or I go and propose that percentage to be decreased. So the thing is, packaging of the proposal to suit different category of people. Then you will need, the way Lal is telling us, to have the civic disobedience. I will actually go to the street and I'll be like, no, I want that job to be decent. And again, he will come on board and say, I want the inequality in the social stratification. And she'll come on board and say, we want the bill on public participation for the first time to be enacted. So we are saying this, that the bill was out, but how the messaging was done, it was kind of therapeutic. That let us amplify the housing bill. Then Kenyans will not look at these other proposals, because the noise has just been about the housing only, but the other proposals that are really gonna hurt us the most. So kama sisi wamesha reduce. And then what? We are now happy that we can stop all the public engagement and stuff because it has not been reduced by half. And maybe that is what the government had already initiated. That was our thinking. We want to propose it at 1.5, but let us cap it at 3. Then Kenyans will make noise. We are going to reduce it. We are now happy. And we'll be like, yes, we have a listening government. Who told us that? Maybe that was their intention. But I think it is high time for us to also hold the people that we elect in offices to account. If all the MPs did hold a public baraza in their constituencies and take the citizen through this bill at the local level, it could be the MCA actually who's doing that, or the MP. But what is the kind of conversation but our leaders are exposing us to elicit these kind of hard feelings? I am actually hurting as a Kenyan. I'm just from election. My brother has lost job. And today the government is telling me that my salary is going to be decreased because of this proposal. And I am also not sure if my employer is going to sustain me. So we have these emotions that are really hurting. You know, right now Kenyans are really hurting. But I'm just looking beyond this, that we need to hold our politicians to account so that public participation is not only left for the county government or the budgeting committee, but what are you doing as a politician? And I'm really looking forward to that report by Mzalendo to see the interaction of our politicians, how many of them spoke to this bill, and what were their proposals, so that we don't see you outside making a lot of noise, but the Speaker of the National Assembly said, usinyamaze kwa in the assembly, but inje unapiga kelele. You know, inje ita make sense. Kwenye sense ita make where your voice really matter. As my leader, ni hapo ndani. And what did you propose as my leader? So that when I go to Hamisi, my constituency is Hamisi constituency at home. I'll be like, Mwesh, I saw you speaking, and right now you are telling me this. It is really not aligning to the objective of the Hamisi voters. So I think we need to go beyond from the traditional way of engaging, but embracing and creating other alternative spaces that we can come in and speak our voices.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Purity. So targeted audience, targeted communication, simple format, you know, I love that in terms of cartoon, you know, in terms of every single segment, how is this affecting you, which amendment is doing so. So to piggybacking on that, Dennis, class struggle. Sorry? You want to add, you want to, or you want to do a two-finger, like rebut her. Okay, I will welcome you to rebut before I call Dennis. So rebut.
My name is Biti Kimani from Bunge Mashinani, and to what Purity has said about public participation, I think that civic education also has to be reached to the people, to the smallest devolved unit, so that the citizens can be able to participate in public participations and give their inputs. If you're able to devolve this civic education even to the smallest, to the village level. And that means that we have devolved governance to the people, just like the Constitution of Kenya Article 1 says, that the sovereign power belongs to the people of Kenya. And the PFM Act, the Principles of Fiscal Planning, the Constitution of Kenya 2010, and the County Government Act 2012, in addition to the Access to Information Act 2016, they allow people to get the information. The document that is supposed to be reaching to be public participated for should get to the public 14 days before. Coming from Kikuyu constituency, it has been said that we have agreed to the finance bill. There is no public participation that was called for. There is no one that has said that they were asked any questions. We don't know where that information came from, but we really feel that in the Constitution of Kenya, Article 174, it has given the people the power to recall the elected the elected leaders. Because when we are exercising our sovereign power, we exercise it through two ways. It is done directly and indirectly. Directly is where we exercise our power and go for voting, and indirectly is where we donate the same sovereign power to the democratically elected leaders in exchange for good governance. Now, in cases where we don't have good governance, then we can recall our elected leaders. I feel that if we had maybe time, we could have called for petitioning of our MPs. Maybe we could have collected signatures in defiance with the with the finance bill. Then we now take the petitions to them. If now they go to the parliament and pass the bill, then we now go back to the ground to recall them, because the Constitution allows us.
Thank you so much. And I think there are some constituency where I saw a number of people petition their member of parliament. And as you clearly mentioned, even them, they were shocked. They had that their constitution has agreed, with this bill. And they were like, who did they talk to? Waliongea na nani? Nani alisema hivyo? So it is really comedy. And you had the VP said, tuko vizuri, we have the number, and na vitu kwa ground you're not sure of that. So thank you for that particular contribution. So I do agree, civic education in a simplified format, as I said, very targeted, very granular at the simple kitongoji, yani to the village level. And of course it's costing, but eventually I think in the long run, if you look at it, then it becomes cheap that this bill being passed as it is, with all those, or the flaws which it have, can be really problematic. So asante sana. Dennis, the class struggle. How do we balance this reducing inequality at the same where, the economists and the theories of how do we make it right? Karibu.
Thank you. And before that, I would like to say that whatever we are discussing here is not rocket science. They are very practical things. And a very simple example I want to give is in 2017, we identified a very young person in Mathare. And as a community, we were in unison, in agreement that he was going to be our front runner for MCA. And we elected him by a landslide because he grew up among us. We knew him, he knew our struggle, and he knew what we really wanted as a community. Then immediately he was sworn in, he disappeared. He moved out of the ghetto. He went he went to live somewhere across the road. But slowly we were investigating where he went to live. We went and collected him and brought him back with all his belongings back to slums and asked him, where are you going? Sasa ndio unaona sisi ni wezi. While we were electing you, haukuona sisi ni wezi. You see? And we forced him to stay there until 2022. So right now, another guy was also elected in Korogocho, and he disappeared. And Korogocho community are coming to benchmark how we did it so that they can also go and bring back their MCA. Yes, yes. So these things are very possible. Back to class struggle, I'll say until everyone is free, no one is free. And it always pains me when I see doctors going on strike and lawyers are silent. When teachers are complaining and doctors are silent. When security guards are complaining and those of us who are in comfort zone, we are silent. As a country, we've reached a point whereby we should feel the pain of each other. If doctors are agitating, we need to join them. If security guards and these people whom Atweli represent are complaining, then doctors should down their tools. In the last doctor strike, I remembered someone came to mobilize us in the slums and said, doctors are on strike, let us go and demonstrate on their behalf, because if we don't join them, it is us who go to public hospitals who will suffer. And we went and told doctors that, you know, you guys are so modest, you have your own dignity, you cannot sleep on the road. Go back to work, then we will make all the noise on your behalf. And in 2 days, government signed a CBA on behalf of doctors. I think that is where we need to go. Because the government in place, or any other government, they have very strong propaganda tools. And they'll always craft a narrative which to get, there's a very thin line between truth and lies. So if you are not keen to fact check information, if you are not keen on how to combat government's propaganda, in the long run, it's us citizens who will lose. And the government will never lack what to tell us, an excuse to tell us. They'll tell us it's the employed people who refuse to pay taxes, and that's why we've not delivered. And so how can we propose, or what can government do? In as much as I'm not an economist, I don't live in space. I live on Earth, specifically in Kenya. To me, if I'm advising the government today, and sometimes I hear David Ndi speaking, and I tell myself, these are the people who are discouraging young people from going to school. Because if with this kind of reasoning and you went to London School of Economics, then it's better I stay on the ground and I listen to stories Ajaba. You see? Yes. Yes, it gives him more hope, you see? So we were taught in school that the greatest economic earning for this country is farming. Government should forgo, because at the current state we are in, all these super infrastructural developments are not worth it. Government should consider investing in farmers. Government should go out and search for market. I hear there is a Kenyan phone which is to be launched soon. Government wants to sell phones. Can that phone be sold in Japan? You see? We as Kenyans, can you buy that phone? No, only vizuri it's written made in Kenya. We can't, you see? But government can sell lots of avocados in Japan because they know what we are growing here is not genetically modified, it's natural. We can conquer the world through Kenyan tea, Kenyan coffee. But what is happening currently in where we are producing tea and coffee? It's chaos, you see? And some of them are clearing the tea bushes to erect buildings, you see? So government should go out and see what can we sell to China, what can we sell to India, what can we sell to our neighbors Uganda? Because the economy of Uganda is expanding, because they are selling more to us than any other country in the world. And what they are selling is milk, eggs, oranges, maize, you see. So let government empower farmers. By empowering farmers, I don't mean the big boys, but empowering small-scale farmers so that money can go to the households. If we do that, then as a country, we won't have all these things of class struggle. But most importantly, as we are working on that, let government reduce wastage. Let government reduce wastage, because standard newspaper is 60 shillings. Why should government buy it at 180 shillings, you see? This water is 30, 50 shillings. Why should parliament, you supply it at 100 shillings, you see? So those are simple steps we can do. And hizo ndio stories za Java, which we speak on the ground, as opposed to these ideas where he told us that if you have an idea of how we can make the economy work, send it to this email. Then yet at the treasury, we have people who are being paid 6-figure salaries to design our economic structure. So that's the way to go. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dennis. I love that. As in fact, now more than ever, our government is even more intelligent, more savvy. As in the propaganda which they can push there, mpaka hata you don't even know which is false news, which is created news and such. And I love that prioritization. What are we best at? I mean, what can we sell as Kenyans comparing to investing on things which are not even giving us the most return. Diana, you had most of the question, domestic mobilization, how do we sell it, how do we operationalize it. You had the issue of the 1.5. What happened to the rest of the 50, 80, which is, the devil, they say the devil is in the detail. Tumesahau hata hizo zote. And I like what Purity is saying. Actually, some amendments are actually a strategy. That wanaeka, wanajua tutapiga nduru, watapunguza ile kidogo kidogo, lakini ile kubwa is hidden there. Please, your thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Allow me to comment briefly on what Rono asked. And this would be my answer. The man who promises everything is sure to fulfill nothing. And everyone who promises too much is in danger of using evil means in order to carry out their promises, and is already on the road of perdition. I even Googled perdition. It is internal destruction, damnation in this life and in the afterlife. Tutasuluhisha, tutapanga, tutawezesha, tutasababisha, tutakosesha, tutatenda, everything. A clear difference between what Kibaki did, and he's lauded for very many things and considered a failure in certain things. He knew, he decided, mine is the economy. I will not be the strongest person in these other things. I'll fix education, I'll fix the economy. He grew, he found a dire situation. We were on stagnation, 0.6%. He left us at 7%. Yet we had a war midway. Surely, this government, 8 months, and we never once had, Moi aliiba kila kitu. Sasa he just took control and went behind the wheel, did what he needed to do. I think that is part of what Kenyans, we need to drive this government, to get a clear vision of what they want to do, because without that, all we will have is manipulation. We need leadership that inspires us as opposed to manipulating us. Let me go to the housing levy. And if Olal, you're online, I have heard you celebrating that it has been reduced to 1.5%. If today's maandamano does nothing else, let it express the anger of a government keen to mock us, because we already did the calculations for 3% housing levy. Hakuna Mkenya alikuwa apate nyumba. It would have taken us 50 years for the highest paying Kenyan to earn a house. So you take it to 1.5 so that we take 100 years, a century, to earn a house. It is even lower, because now the employer is not contributing. So if the employer is not contributing, we are at 6%. We are now at 1.5%. So we are supposed to take 150 years. We will have decayed, global warming will have come, African race will be dominant, and nobody will have had a house. So the proposal and the reduction on the housing levy, for MPs to have accepted that, surely that is pure abuse of Kenyans' intelligence. And please, if there is something we need to send home, whether this is what they wanted, it is clear they never wanted to give us houses. When the population was done, and me, I was counted at my mother's house, so I don't know whether they counted that my mother's house in the village was mine. Mimi sina nyumba. But they said 61% of Kenyans live in their own houses. That is the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics. Census have politics, but not as much. We speak about the urban poor and the middle class. Sababu mimi lazima niendeshe gari, sina nyumba, mutanisamehea kwa sasa. Talala kwa gari, but nalipa rent. But most of Kenyans in our rural areas, they have a house. The quality, and we are not fixing quality. The housing levy has not told us they are fixing quality, because we will not go to Turkana, to Marsabit, to Isiolo, to Mandera and build those skyscrapers. The apartments belong to a different place. So this was just a wrong idea, where they now want to have some little less pocket money to play with. It must be rejected in its entirety, and the current proposed amendment display the dishonesty in the housing levy now more than ever. So if we can speak about it, please let us expose it for what it is. Then Fidelis, you raised the issue of domestic resource mobilization. Counties are currently...
Actually, before you go there, there was Osedo mentioned that, so what happened to the rest? What does that mean?
Yes.
You forgot before you go to...
Oh, the rest. So now, because even when we had the big conversation, the bulk of the time the government had to be educated by an economist how the housing levy is a bad idea, and they tried to defend it, they distracted us completely. This finance bill, I like to call it the top-up budget and the top-up tax. Because what the government has done is top-up tax for the bottom. Okay? Top-up tax for the bottom while protecting the investing class. That is what this particular finance bill is about. I do agree that content creators need to contribute. They have been asked to pay a withholding tax. That is not the end. Once they file the returns, at that point we will calculate their income tax. But it's necessary. As we do that, we removed all the tax on international companies, the corporate tax for digital companies, big data, all those, theirs was removed. This particular proposal brings tax exemption for people who build hospitals for 100 beds. Where most of us live, hospitals have 30 beds. Those pay tax, but the bigger ones don't. If you build a big recreation park for sports and entertainment, you get tax exemption. If you're supporting Youth wa Mtaani 20, a few of them, you do not have 50 acres. You've not developed 50 acres. You continue paying tax. Let us remember the helicopters that will need to be repaired. We've been told that we need to attract all the helicopters from Tanzania, Uganda to come and be repaired here. Yet we have our own motorbikes that would have been fixed and created more jobs. it is a top-up tax for the bottom. They will pay more so that the top lives comfortably. Now, that's one of the areas. I don't know what else to say about the turnover tax, because the turnover tax, based on the current state of the economy, maybe should have started at people with a turnover of 5,000 a month, a day. That at least would get us to 5 times 3, 65 times 30. 5 times 30 is 150. 1.5 million. So in a year, 6 something. Maybe that would have been a better bracket for progressive tax to subject to turnover tax, as we allow the bottom of the pyramid to grow during these difficult times. So that is another area that is very, very worrying. For the first time, maize, wheat, rice, sugar, beans. By the way, chakula yetu, I need to speak about our beans. Thanks, Rono. Beans will be subject to VAT. So kama mnalia hii bei ya sukari, ataneni na sukari, kufeni. Because the price of food commodities will just be unbearable. How do you fail to address food? At least let us live to pay the tax. Let us live to pay the tax. Let our children have some food on the table. All these have not been discussed or raised anywhere. What we keep hearing is the housing levy, 35%, and a few other things. Tax administration procedures, definitely lawyers and tax auditors will raise it because they have better platform to raise it. It's definitely a problem for access to justice. It will be used as an area of attack. It is something that the court had already ruled on, so it is a gray area. But the most painful and extractive clauses are yet to be addressed in this particular finance bill. It is not yet lost. MPs have refused to give us a public participation framework. When they provide for it, this time we participated, we went to they were in a hotel near the river airport. Okay? So they were not even at KICC, Stanley, or a public hall. No, Hilton Garden Inn. Yeah, Hilton Garden Inn. Yes, I at least had access. But we went as members of Okoa Uchumi. Na tunakuanga nini? Kila mahali. Me for some reason, uzuri nilikuwa na kamkutano nikajichelewesha. I got there at 12. Okoa Uchumi members were there from 9. We presented at 4. By that time, we are hungry. So tunasema, in summary, as we highlight our issues, if you're at Hilton Garden Inn and Parliament does not give you lunch, how many Kenyans can afford? Ata fare ya kufika huko ni shida. You get? So that is what public participation. After 2 weeks of listening to technocrats and experts, then there was a half-day participation of hustlers at KICC. Luckily, this time round, that did not deter us. Kenyans have continued to speak. I like that there have been Twitter spaces, TikTok, ata mwenye anaongeleleanga nothing else. Everybody has come back to bread and butter, chakula, and tax. I think we need to get a way of making the informal participation formal. Let us not allow them to keep defining how we participate. I am hoping, in addition to what Jerop has told us today, CFA and Twaweza, these findings of what the clauses by clause, simutumie wetangula leo kabla wa niko na email ya clerk ni clerk.nationalassembly@parliament.go.ke. Nitawatumia email. Mkishatuma tuwekeeni Twitter na Facebook, WhatsApp status tuweke. and then we all send our MPs. If you have not gone to your constituency, like Gathoni wa Mushomba, all those MPs in Busia, Bungoma, these are the views. That way, we elevate. The media has said there was public outcry. There is no public there is public voice. If they are hearing cries, those are the voices of Kenyans. Do not negate our public participation. When we mothers go to the market and scream, mimi napiganga nduru kwa supermarket kila siku kwa duka, sababu budget haingiani. So I think that needs to be captured as the current voice. It is not a cry. Si ati tunalia. Tunasema hii ni budget ya kilio. And let's affirm ourselves so that we get back our power. So that's around the other clauses. Please do not relent. The vote is today, tomorrow, Thursday. Let us engage. Those who can go to the streets, wherever. If you're in Kikuyu, Kimani Ichung'wah went to ACK, read for people the clauses ya gas, akawaambia si iko sawa. Wamama wawili wakasema wale waliinua mkono waulize swali ya wakujibiwa. So Koni people are saying something different, but let's keep telling them. And like has been indicated, there was my MP, several avenues have been created for us to tell them the truth. But let me come back to domestic resource mobilization. And note, if there was a way I could riot as Diana against this government, it would be a tax boycott. But unfortunately, it is so mandatory that it gets scary. So we do pay tax at all times, and we do not want to even cripple the operations of government by not paying tax. Domestic resource mobilization that has been proposed has been twofold. One, we increase the domestic revenue collections through taxation, and counties have also been given a duty, which I find problematic, to increase rates. So land rates will go up, water rates, permits, and so on. Yet most of the county rates are not supposed to be for revenue collection. They are supposed to be regulatory. So that you interact with the public health officer to hakikishe butchery zetu ni safi. If you take them too high, people will opt, wacha hii mbuzi ikuliwe bila stamp ya public health officer, and will have dire consequences. So that is one of the area, and those who work in counties, please question how we are doing own source revenue at the county level. But when it comes to taxation, all we need to do is strengthen compliance without even increasing any tax. If we strengthened compliance, we would be fine. But we would not be fine without addressing revenue side, expenditure side. If all our money, tax and debt is lost to corruption, to paying damages, to paying people for political consolidation, the domestic tax revenue will never be enough. So we do not have a resourcing problem. We have an expenditure problem. The minute the expenditure is corrected, everybody, hata kwa chama tukipata dividend, tutakuwa tunapeleka ushuru. Because it makes sense to resource that particular government. Once we address that side, it will be very, very useful. And as I close, the domestic revenue mobilization also includes something Kibaki did. He made sure we were not borrowing externally. When you borrow externally, kama SGR was close to $500 billion, $500 billion USD, thereabout. Sa hiyo dola ilikuwa 74. Sa hii dola iko 140. So it's double. So what we borrowed, for us to repay, we will have to repay double that particular percent increase in the principal, not the interest. For that reason, part of why we were thriving is we created an environment for both government and local people to borrow domestically. When you borrow, the shilling is a shilling. It is the same throughout. So that stabilized significantly. But something else that Kibaki did is hakuchukua pesa yote ya banks akapeleka kwa serikali. There was enough money. And those who are older, we remember banks like, I can mention it because it has been rebranded, Barclays. Barclays ndio ilikuwa tu inapeana loan kwa watu wako na mshahara kiwango fulani. Ordinary people had no way of accessing loans. Then because he reduced how much banks needed to do with their reserve deposit, all of a sudden, every bank, paka hiyo Barclays, had to go looking for people. Do you want a loan? The economy thrived. Everybody became an investor. What has happened with the Jubilee regime and what is happening now, we want to make sure that the most profitable person to lend to is government. So all the money within banks has gone to government. There is no money for ordinary investors. That has suppressed growth. It has suppressed people who can pay tax. As a result, revenue collection, whether you increase tax or not, will go down. So we do not have a revenue problem. Kenyans are not the biggest tax cheats, no. We would be a tax haven if Kenya was that facilitative. We have an expenditure problem, a governance problem, and that is why we have such huge debt. It is said, ukiona mtu wako na shida ya madeni mingi hivyo, hata wenye wako kwa, inaitwaje hizi nini? These apps, this nini? Digital money lending apps. The ones who borrow too much, there is always a certain addiction they have. Sindio? When our youth are always borrowing, they are betting, maybe they are addicted to alcohol. What is our government addicted to for it to borrow to this level that they have to cripple us? What are they addicted to? Wheezy. Project Wheezy. Project Wheezy. So until we address that particular addiction that is creating for us a debt problem, a revenue problem that is linked to expenditure, we will continue treating the wrong cancer, and that is just disastrous. We will all die of chemotherapy for the wrong reasons. Let us cure the real problem. Asanteni sana.
Thank you, Dana. Thank you, Dana, for almost those close remarks. Because I think in summary what we're hearing is the government has enough source of revenue and mainstream of revenue. What is challenging is accountability, transparent, and trust. Olal, I think you had Lalo. Olal is actually in law, it is you ulipotea. Fred, are you online now? Can you be able to say a few things as a closing remark? I think, unless there are some burning question which the flow. Philbert, do you have anything online? Yes. Okay, and then Olal can come on the floor. So please share the various online, and then Olal can react to some, and then also as the panel member are winding up, they can also add some voice. And when you're adding voice, Diana, Dennis, and Purity, you can also just have an overview, closing remark on the discussion. So, Philbert, tusaidie kusoma.
Practically do to avoid the debt situation getting worse. Then Michael says, I believe the majority of Kenyans have not read and understood the content of the finance bill, except for the housing levy and maybe TOT, which is affecting the hustlers. In this case, what is the role of civil society? Did they conduct thorough public participation and enlighten Kenyans on the finance bill? Alex Odongo from NRG says some MP from the ruling party have publicly chest-thumped that the finance bill will pass without changing even a comma. mpende msipende, because they control the numbers of National Assembly. The president also said he will be watching keenly how MPs will vote. So do we really need public participation where the end justifies the means? Another one is from Nyorude. He says, why is the Treasury keen on varying the pay rate from 30 to 35% for those earning more than $500,000, yet we know that those categories do not necessarily depend on pay slip, but rather dividends? And also that, is the Treasury targeting the wrong candidate in its quest to show up revenue? Could this be the Treasury way of testing waters so that if they get away with it, they target to increase the corporate tax in subsequent finance bill in coming years? Again, tax on dividends have been increased from 5% to 15%. Isn't that punitive to this target group? There's also a question by Stephen Osedo. He says, public participation is tick box exercise in Kenya. 13 years later, after promulgating the 2010 Constitution, we still do not have a public participation law in place. Is it by design that our MPs have failed to enact the public participation bill? Another question is, why did the government or the Treasury drop the presumptive tax that was introduced in the income tax through amendment of the Finance Bill of 2018? The tax was meant to capture business people who don't pay VAT. Another question is from Dennis Langat, and he says, why does the government need, why government need house? Or they know to do audit is not easy. And the other question is, do you support what DG said when he says MP vote wrong will not get road? When the Deputy President said that MPs who will not vote for the bill will not get roads in their places. Thank you.
Wow, a lot, yeah. Filba, you'll have, I think at a given time we'll be having to look back to you to repeat some of the question. I will try and read out some which I managed to pick, and some probably we will look quickly to clarification. Is Olal back? Fred Olal? Fred? Has Fred become Mumo? Yeah, he is okay. Happy is I think is Olal. Okay, fine. Then Olal, as you are trying to reconnect. Risha, am I seeing your hand up? No, it's a sign. Risha.
No, my hand wasn't up. Thank you, Melanie.
Thank you, ma'am. So Diana, Dennis, a number of questions there. So Cuba is talking about the debt issue. I know there was a talk that Kenya government usually loan to steal the whole debt, which is usually borrowed, is always stolen. How do we mitigate the issue of debt? There was a question also on civic education. I think she addressed it that we are yet to go to the granular level to Wananchi at even village level. And then there was the issue of msipende mpende msipende mutake musitake, the chest thumping that we have the number, it will pass. Then do we even need to have this discussion? You know, that kind of apathy. And I know we've done study which actually have shown that the people who actually were participating more over time, they gave up because of that. Nothing is the opinion I give will not change anything. What's your view that the whole team, in terms of imeandikwa, it's like in the, Bible imesema kwamba it was said it will happen, so muruke mukimbie huku na huku, we will do it. And piggybacking on that, also Sedo is saying over the years, 13 years since it was enacted, it has remained a tick box. Only few places county will say they have a bit of a meaningful one. In the hierarchy, they're doing much better. And so is it by design, by default? Of course, the question is, do the MP know exactly what they are doing? There is the VP question on MPs who will not vote hawatapata barabara. Mimi sijui inchi. Anyway, I'm not shocked. After all, tuliambiwa inchi kila mtu wako na shareholding. So, mutajua wenyewe. And then there is the issue of the push for housing. Yet we don't have enough mechanism, regulation to ensure that it's very clear on how it's managed, how the money, who is taking care of the money, the exit plan, the entry plan, and those kind of stuff. And then there's a question of the 500 plus. In terms of the 35%, I think the confusion which maybe the contributor was wondering, why 500, and then why is it on payee? Why not on other source of income? Because I think NBS removed a statistic saying only 120,000 Kenyans earn 120,000 shillings in a month. Narudia 120, ambapo Dennis tayari amesha kuambia kuna ndugu 50 kijiji kizima kinamsubiri hiyo hela. So imagine out of if you said adult Kenya make up 55% of this country. So out of those almost of 25 to 30, only 120,000. They make 120,000 shillings monthly. Yani hii ambayo na asa ebusa niambie. So it's really a shaky there. I think if I miss some, maybe feedback can help. If you guys capture some, you can come in to respond to that. As also we are closing the session, because you want to not to be very far away from them. So you can get your response and then you can have your closing remark. Who wants? I will have the youth. Mmesema waga munaonewa, hamua ushirikishwi, pretty malalamika sana. And then nitahave watu wa Mathare na Kibira ambao matajiri, imesemekana matajiri wanawadharau sana. Next, Dennis. And then Diana, the expert umeambiwa, the Madam Director herself, utatumalizia. Sindio? While you are doing the closing remarks of the whole session.
Thank you so much.
And Olal, if you're online, you can please you can send a message to Philba, and then we can have you join us, kwa sababu we haven't heard from you since the first round. Period.
Thank you so much. But I think the Kenyan youth, we are we are more intentional in shifting this narrative to naonewa, but now we are creating the spaces. Na kule ambapo atupatiwi nafasi, tunasongeza kiti yetu hapo ndani. And then we speak our issue. So for me, my closing bit will be just a clarion call for the young people of this nation. Wakati hii gavana take up easy loans, you can just guess the age of the people who are making decisions. We are the people who are going to pay for all these debts for the next 30, 20, or 40 years that the good Lord will give us under this earth. And there's no any better country to go to. You will not choose any country B. This is the country that we need to make it more better and more conducive for our children to thrive in. Hakuna place ingine. So I think our level of engagement only need to be shifted to be more objective, so that we can speak things that are more objective and they're making meaning. So the place of political accountability. Do sisi ndio tunakuanga more active time elections. I think we also need to just upgrade it and now start talking about the political activation to hold these leaders to account. And I can tell you, in 2020, I did an accountability engagement with the youth of Kiambu County. And today, if you go to Kiambu County, most of the policies, structures, procedures have changed, not because of any of the 36 and above, but it is because of the 35 and below years. The same taxation in Kiambu, the youth say that we will not pay for parking at this rate, because why are you telling us to pay the parking fees? Nata your parking slot, hata mjatengeneza, construct it first. So I think you can see the youth are willing to be active contributors. But what we are saying is that fix this, so that our level of trust can be reclaimed. Then we will be able to walk in the same path. And I think also the other accountability thing will be on the financial accountability. Yes, wamesha tuambia mtadu what, amtafanya anything, sindio? Yes, msha reduce. The second reading is coming. At the end of the month, Kenya must have what? A finance act. It must be there. So whichever proposal that the discussion will be having, either to reduce, exclude, add, at the end of the month, we must have a document that will guide the revenue collection of this country. But what next for us is that the spirit of accountability needs to be activated. That we are not just doing this to say that this bill is bad, but after coming a pita na 1%, what is that 1% doing? And I think for us as the young people, we'll be more keen to track how is the housing thing going to work? How many youth in those counties are going to be employed? What will be their wage? And what will be their work environment? That we say, tutaki kulipa, but we want to invest in something as stakeholder, because it is a company tuliambiwa, tunataka tupate marupurupu, ikue ina make sense. So I think my closing remarks is that all is not lost, but it is just an indication that Kenyans are alive to the governance processes of this country. And the government should really be keen on this. That menza hivi, next year it might really be bad. And sisi tuko alive to all these. Thank you.
I'll step out briefly, but when I came back, what I got is that Wakenya tumerudi. Na tumerudi by fire, by force. Because I know last year there was hope, and then after election, 3 months later, watu ni kama wakakata tamaa. Lakini naona this finance bill, ni kama gava wamejingia. Waswahili wanasema wameingia choo cha kike. You can be attacked anytime. So tunasema serikali wameingia choo cha kike, that it's very unpredictable what can happen inside there. And I love Purity energy that's saying, unajua nini? Youth, hakuna there is nothing about kwamba atu mambo ya kuonewa. We will be out there, we will be part of the process, and first and foremost we want to even drive it. Kwanza wametuamsha. So thank you very much, Purity. Dennis, karibu.
Asante. You see, there is a very interesting animal called a cat. We can always chase cat away, and it walks out so slowly without resisting. But today, if we lock up ourselves in this room with a cat and decide we want to kill it, then most likely, if we'll come out alive, we won't have our eyes out. You see, this friendly domesticated animal, it's very dangerous. And MPs are chest thumping that tupende tusipende, it will pass. And I want to remind our Excellency the President that personally I interact with Generation Z. And those are the guys who told Uhuru atupangwingwi. And it is true, those kids are pangwingwi. The day they will walk out, the day they'll get tired, this country will not be manageable. So I want to tell the President, those kids, the youths, they are not naive. They're just waiting for the right time to come. And it might be too late. To the rest of us, to the rest of Kenyans, it is high time we unite or we perish together as fools. So those are my closing remarks. Thank you.
Dana, before probably, is Olal back? Thank you. So, Diana, karibu.
Okay, I think the questions were very many, but I'll address just two, the ones that I remember. Definitely, the finance bill is complex. It's something that we need to read more. Have NGOs done their bit? I do not know what else we can do, but I would say for the person who asked that question, this time we have tried. Even organizations that do not focus on public finance or economic matter have entered into the space of budgeting and taxation. Can more be done? Yes, it can be done. And I think the media has also focused a lot on this. Every time, even if you track the headings for the talk show, it's just nomenclature, but all of us have been rallied to come and discuss these issues of the finance bill, the taxation, and it's also an expression through other media, direct media. Every Kenyan in their own spaces is speaking. If there is need for more education around taxation, it is a very complex area. I have been in the world of governance, human rights. I am still learning. I am glad to be called an expert. It means we are getting somewhere. I have understood it from the governance angle, and now I can explain it. But it has been a complex taxation, public finance, economy has been complex and elitist. And right there is the problem, because it is at the heart of distribution of power and resources. Then the second area is public participation. And all these sentiments that we are not shareholders. So, sisi, aituhusu. We are not shareholders, then we contribute money for directors to get dividends. What are we saying to ourselves and our MPs? The president comes and says you will not get roads. If there is low tax, all of us, our children have not been getting access to public education. All of us, our children, I don't know, it has been said 120,000 Kenyans earn above 100,000. Yet, the only people who will get bursaries and help loans is 37% of Kenyans. Where are the others supposed to get money to fund themselves directly under the new funding model for higher education? And you're no longer funding at 60,000 a year. You will now be funding the full fee, because there will be no government contribution in that particular fee. So every Kenyan who has a student in university will be paying 240 on the minimum. Let me say for not very specialized, I won't call them ordinary courses, not very specialized courses. For people who then want to take more technical courses, you will pay up to 600,000. Kama hatuna pesa ya ushuru ya 600 ndio tuko nayo. But we choose, what else tutafanya nini sasa? Tutafanya nini sasa na washaamua na ni wao wako na nguvu? Part of why we are here. And there are times I feel like telling Kenyans, and you've had popular cliches. They say, baba pumzika kwanza, wacha Wakenya waumie. It's the same thing for people who speak publicly about what ails us. We are here because of apathy. Kenyans consistently said, si wameshaamua. Sindio? Kisirudiwe, we even know the outcome. Deep state will come decide for us. Because a significant population of Kenyans who ought to have voted decided to enjoy their Netflix, earn some more money, bet some more. I am sure we got more ineligible, irregular, evil, rogue leaders than ever. They are the ones in power. We are all feeling the pain together. Apathy, apathy, apathy. Since 2013. We allowed Parliament to increase debt ceiling 1, debt ceiling 2. Now they are anchoring it as an anchor of GDP, a very vague thing that we do not. Just chukua deni yenye unaweza lipa. Budget for what you can. If you continue doing that, please enjoy the more pain that will come, the bleeding, the roasting, enjoy. Or decide to start doing something so that as the president tells us we'll have pain for 3 years, we are also inflicting pain on the ruling class to stop taking us for granted. And those of us, if you're about to retire, your retirement will be better. For those of us, life that will begin at 40, I will live better in my 40s. My children will have a different space. The place of voice and participation in governance, in leadership, cannot be understated. If you have run a company, many directors, founders will tell you, when they were very stuck, the most insignificant employee, they asked them a very regular question, a very difficult question, got a regular answer, and right there was the solution. This government may be struggling with macroeconomics from London School of Economics. They will be surprised that they just need to go to that mama mboga they aired, wamuulize kama balance sheet yako balance na stock haiko unafanyanga nini? And right there will be the correct answers. Kenyans, wake up, wake up. We've been told we have nowhere to migrate to. Even if you migrate, Miguna is only in this country because Kenya was the citizenship of origin. If you go to whichever country that you think you will get acquired citizenship. Where if you carry this bad culture of Kenya, you will be deported back here. So it is good to know this is your country of origin. It is your natural country of deportation. So you must fix it. Nobody else can fix it for us. The fire that has come with the finance bill, mimi ninafurahia sana sababu ya vile mnajishirikisha, hatuko peke yetu. Siku hizi at least nasalimiwa na mama mboga, naambiwa ninafanya kazi mzuri, sisumbui serikali, tuendelee kufanya kazi mzuri ya kuunda serikali pamoja. Asanteni sana, and on behalf of Okoa Uchumi, we celebrate you and we ask you to continue taking steps for economic growth.
Jamani, cheers for everybody. Thank you everyone, online, in-house, Dennis, Purity, Diana, Olal. I mean, I think it has been quite exciting. As Diana said, the macro level, the finance level, they're usually technical, but I think Purity also had echoed and some of her sentiment that if you make it as simple as possible, you know, to the more basic, you know, like you said, ukimwambia mama mboga, unajua katika ile shilingi moja unatengeza ama shilingi 100 unatengeza, gava inachukua 70. So you can imagine when I can visualize that this is how it's going to affect me. It's even more live, and I do agree. Let this conversation not end here. Hata kama wakipitisha hii bill, bado tutaenda kwa street. We will still, Olala amesema, hata wakipitisha, tutaongea mpaka sijui itakuwaje. And I know there's a number of questions. I mean, on Philba is telling me live is on fire. Unfortunately for the people who are online, for now, due to interest of time, we won't take many of those of questions. I know they are related to accountability, you know, the spending, and I love that you know, this is the most strange things about many developing country government, that in a normal house, even in my office, when I go to my HR, naenda kuomba loan, they always ask me first, Melanie, unatumiaje pesa yako? Even in the bank, when business go to ask for loan, they will, my God, it is a nightmare. They will take through how do you spend, how do you do that. And the first thing wanakuambia nini? Punguza matumizi. Si ndio? Serikali yenyewe inatuambia sisi wenyewe wananchi tupunguze matumizi. but when it comes to them, unashangaa wanalalamika hamna hela, lakini mwisho wa siku tuna additional costs, mara maonua magari makubwa, mara ofisi inatengezwa. Hasa you even wonder, mtu ambaye anakuambia utupunguze matumizi, yeye amezidisha yake, alafu anakuomba ile pen bill na ndururu ulionayo mfukoni umpe wewe ubaki na ndururu. So inakuwa, it's become so difficult, as you're saying, that to trust this government to even want to contribute, as just say that Kenya have never hawajai kukataa kutoa mchango ama to give the responsibility. It's just that hela inakwenda wapi. So I think for the people online, what we've agreed is that we will take a number of questions which have been brought on the floor, post them on Twitter, and then have as many people as possible to interact and to have a debate around some of those questions which have been raised. And I love what Diana has proposed as the email for the clerk, and everybody else, please, we have a handle online. Sarah will share with us what it is to publish this, this finding, to amplify this particular perspective. I know there are a number of people which they resonate with what has come out, as many of us have said. So to close up, finally, I'll have one of our team. She's based in Tanzania. She's an advocacy and engagement lead. She has been very instrumental behind the scene in supporting the whole process. To just give us some closing remarks, some vote of thanks before we close it a day. We do have an amazing tea somewhere behind. Sarah will show us. The guys online, well, tutatumia picha. Yes. Okay. So we have two from Sifia Osedo. I know you really wanted to be here, and then after Osedo, Risha will come in to say some few vote of thanks. Hi, Risha. Yeah, so guys, that is Risha. Osedo, please, probably you can give us a video. We want to see the visual, so saying a few vote of thanks, and then Risha will jump in there. Osedo, karibu. Osedo?
I hope you can all hear me.
We can, just a bit louder, and then we want a video. Unless you're in a place where you can't give us a video.
Hey.
He's on video. I think he just needs to be.
My video is on. Can you see my video?
We can only see Risha.
Moses, can you pin Osedo, please?
There. Okay, yeah, pin him. Yeah. Okay. Osedo. Yes. Welcome, Osedo.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Melania, and thank you everyone for finding time to be with us this morning. It's been quite engaging. As CFA, we want to send our gratitude to our partners, the Okoa Uchumi Coalition. Diana, thank you so much. We are so happy to have you. We've benefited a lot. I hope the country has listened to all the rich discussions that we've had this morning. So I don't want to take my time, but on behalf of the Center for Fiscal Affairs, on behalf of the collaborating partners, that is Twaweza, and everyone else who made this possible, I want to say asanteni sana. And please, just as the speakers have said, let's continue with this conversation. I know there are a couple of Twitter spaces that have been organized. There are a couple of conversations that are still ongoing on other platforms. Please, let's be part of them and just make sure that our voices get to the right ears, that is our MPs, even as they sit starting this afternoon to consider this bill. So with those few remarks, I want to hand it back to Melania and Risha to close the meeting. Asante sana, and may God bless you. And apologies, I was not able to be with you physically.
Thank you, Sedo, and thank you for those closing remarks and all acknowledgement. I think it goes for every single person, the coalition, the various Kenyans who Twitter, petition for this finance bill. Love the passion, love the excitement. Risha, karibu mama.
Thank you so much. In many ways, Osedo has said it all, but bear with me for for 2 minutes as we close up. I just wanted to, of course, as Osedo said, thank so much the panelists and all of you for participating physically, online, via the live stream. You know, this is such an important conversation, and it only happens if all of us are part of it. Quickly, I just wanted to talk about 3 things: trust, values, and process. I think, you know, as I listen to you from far away, I think everybody has kind of in some way or another alluded to this idea of how important trust is. You know, how much are we willing to cede our decisions and control to our government, and believe, and how can we believe that they'll do what's best for us? And I think, you know, COVID-19 was one of those really great examples and instances of how I think governments all over the world really came to see, wow, we can't actually force people to comply with our, you know, operating procedures. We really have to, people have to listen to us, and in order to listen to us, they have to trust us. And I think in this issue of tax, it's so clearly important. And we've all talked about how corruption, waste, poor services, all of these contribute to this lack of trust. You know, we don't think that our government is doing what's best for us, and therefore, of course, we want to decide what we do with our own money because we think we'll make the better decisions. In terms of values, I think this is also an important piece that I've heard sort of alluded to, maybe not kind of directly mentioned, but how do we sort of self-identify as a nation, and what are we prioritizing? You know, we've talked about, can we tax the rich more? Can we keep taxing them? But that's a, you know, what kind of story are we peddling to offer people to say, okay, pay tax for services that maybe you're not even using, right? We all know that as our incomes go up, we step into private services. So how do we tell those stories, and how do we self-identify so that those things are kind of palatable to us? And then I think finally process, you know, who's in the room, who makes these decisions? Are we being heard? Are we being listened to? And I think that's come out really importantly as well today, that we don't feel heard, and that's something that has to change. I think it's really important to stress that it's not a sign of weakness or capitulation for a government of any type in any country to reconsider based on, you know, this type of strong feedback that we've been seeing around this finance bill from citizens. I think we can say that, you know, there is broadly an awareness that yes, we do need to pay tax if we want things collectively as a country. Tax is important. All of us need to make our contribution. But as Melania said, that's not what we're averse to. Actually, it's a question of what and how are we taxing, how are we doing this tax, not if we're doing it. So I think the issue of kind of engaging the public, we just need to get better at that. And I think that's the biggest call here to the government of Kenya is let's have a meaningful conversation. We're all willing to make trade-offs, but we need to be engaged and we need to be in the dialogue. And as I said, you know, I just definitely, again, really want to say thank you to the Okoa Chumi Coalition, CFA, as a new partner. It was so smooth to work with you. It's been fantastic. And of course, pulling together something like this in such a short time, it's the work of many, many hands. So really to thank everybody who's contributed, you know, for those of us providing the live stream, the breakfast that you've all been enjoying, all of that. And of course, my amazing Twaweza team who have been working very, very hard until late last night to make all of this happen, and the team at CFA as well. The last thing I wanted to say is just that, you know, at Twaweza, we really fundamentally believe in participation, in inclusion, agency. Citizens need to be heard and listened to. They need to have a chance to contribute to shaping decisions and doing things for themselves. So having this chance to collect people's views and amplify them in this way through the survey, this kind of thing is critical to everything we do. We're really pleased and proud to have been able to do that for this bill. And we hope that those with power over us and power to make these decisions will take all our important voices into account. Otherwise, thank you so much. We will absolutely continue the conversation and the efforts on advocacy, and we really appreciate everybody's time and engagement. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Risha and Osedo, Risha, the submission were quite amazing, and I think it's also a point of reflection, which we will take it forward. And as everyone has said, the discussion does not end here. We will continue on Twitter with our Mama Mboga. I think right now in Kenya, kila mahali ukienda, it is the finance bill, and every one of us, I'm sure they have engaged with as many people. I think I've never engaged with so many Mitumba people. I have ended up spending, I think, 20,000 shillings this only these 2 weeks. Because everybody, atanita, kuja madam, and then I'll be forced to buy a pair of sneakers, I'll be forced to buy some t-shirt, and the conversation, and they are, to be honest, they are bitter. They said, "Uyu baba tulimpigia kura," and they're very honest. The young people, the hawkers, if you go walk around Westland here, they will tell you, we voted for this guy. But tunakuambia hata atuelewe nini inaendelea. So it's, I think what I think as a spirit say is the most exciting thing is Kenya are back in full force. There's a time that Kenya has like almost wamekata tamaa, but they are back in full force. So I'm really happy for our guys here, our guys online. The conversation in Twitter will be going on live. Hiyo kifua amesema itapita bila koma, tuende nao hivyo mpaka mwisho, tujue kwamba tutafika nao wapi. It's only less than a year, tuone kama miaka 2, because recall is after 2 years after election. Let's see after how many recall or repetition probably we will have. So on behalf of Twaweza, CFA, the whole of Kwa Uchumi Coalition, because we are going to be very sincere to claim that hii ni kazi ya mtu mmoja ama watu wawili. Kwa kweli watu wengi wamekuja kufanya hii halfa na the whole engagement to be very successful, and I'm happy we are there. And Diana, we are the people who are not even in finance. We did it. We are good in evidence and survey and those kind of stuff, and Risha, as Risha said, public participation and all kind of stuff. But in terms of the finance, the the nitty-gritties, we were depending clearly on CFA and others to actually give us the good wordings. Which word should we use? But imagine we are the unexpected, or partners. We never expected that we'll be in this space, but here we are. Exactly, because it is about Wananchi, and we felt like, though we're not expert in that, we will hold hand with the people who are best at and see how best can we. So Sarah, please karibu, and said the housekeeping, what to do next, and the way forward, the Twitter, I hear there's a very wonderful tea somewhere. Niliona hizo vitu mlitiokea hapo. No. Hizo we can't. Huwezi kutupatia vitu kama hizo. Tell us good things.
All right. Thank you so much, Melania. And before we give the housekeeping rules, can we allow our online audience to leave? And I will invite each and every one of us to give them a handy clap. And all of us who are online, if you can switch on your microphone. We just want to appreciate you for having stayed with us up to this moment. And then soon after, we will let you go. And please look for a cup of tea, because unfortunately, we cannot share the cup of tea via Zoom, right? So if you're in a position to, please put on your camera. We want to appreciate you. And those of us in the room, would you please join me in giving a very, very hard clap, very warm clap to everybody online for having spent time with us.
So 1 minute for the camera, guys.
Yes, for those who can.
It's not mandatory, so
we just want to feel and to see you as well. And maybe Philbert or Jane, if you're in a position to please help us to take a snapshot of the screen, that would be wonderful. For now, sasa sijui tutatumia style gani, but I think the easiest is the factorial. Yeah, who wants to do to coordinate for us? Because otherwise I'll just do the traditional one, the factorials, right? Sawa, let's do the factorials. We'll begin with 5. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 1. Right? Exactly. So let's make our hands warm enough. It's been very cold this morning, yet all of us managed to be awake, to listen in, and to pay close attention and to ask questions and engage. So make sure your hands are warm enough. We want to drop a real good clap for everybody, both online and in here in the room. So let's go. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2. Thank you so much. Now for our online audience, allow us to let you go. But as you leave, please continue with the conversation. Follow Okwa Uchumi online, follow TISA Kenya online, follow CFA Global online, and follow Twaweza Kenya, Twaweza_Kenya online. Let's continue to have the discussions. It's very important, especially at a time when the House is preparing to take a vote on this very important piece of legislation. Right, so for our online audience, thank you so much, and we wish you a lovely, lovely morning,
So
rest of your day.
You can online feedback and write on the chat.
Yes.
Hash, so that in case of the people who
Yeah.
haven't heard, they can jump.
The conversation continues using the hashtag finance bill. All of us have been using that, but as well as hashtag Sauti Wananchi for the continued conversation. Kwaheri for now. Philbert, please do us the honor of writing those, but we already know they have left. All right. Thank you so much. Kwaheri for now. Let's remember to invite each other. That's